Welcome to IMSA Sports Car Racing in the IMSA Prototype Challenge on NBCSN from a very soggy Daytona International Speedway. Thunderstorms and a cold front coming through the area, but that has not dampened the spirit of the crowd on hand. A lot of scouts here as well, as it's a big weekend for the scouts and the Prototype Challenge cars lined up on pit lane. Welcome, everyone. Brian Till along with Jeremy Shaw. We'll have several guests with us in the booth for this 3-hour event from here at Daytona. The season starts out with a 3-hour race. Where is Daytona International Speedway? Just east of Orlando. That's where it is. The Disneyland for adults, let's call the World Center of Racing. About an hour east of Orlando, Florida. A road course built into the Daytona International Speedway, 3.56 miles around. Good places for passing both of the horseshoes, the International and the West, and then heavy braking into the bus stop. That's where you can get the job done. And can you draft through Speedway 3 and 4 back around to the start-finish line for a victory here at Daytona? You want to start the season off on a good foot. If you can take a victory here, it gives you the championship lead as you head into the rest of that 5-race stretch to the championship at the end of the season. A challenge for all of these drivers, and of course, they want to put on a good show because they're here in front of the IMSA WeatherTech teams, and that is the big league. Drivers in the silver and bronze categories. You got some young drivers, Jeremy Shaw, some experienced drivers as well, and it really is going to be a test for these guys today. Let's look at how they'll start.
There'll be 18 cars entered. Unfortunately, only 17 will start the race. Number 10 car of Joe Robillard and Stephen McAleer, they had some fuel system problems that manifested themselves yesterday evening and in qualifying this morning. That car will not start the race. A huge blow to their championship aspirations. So, starting at the back in the 17th position, car number 86 for One Motorsports is Dave House. On the 8th row of the grid is Greg Palmer in car number 3 for Junior 3 Racing. And alongside him, Steve Scullen III in car number 46 for CT Motorsports. Row 7 is car number 61 for Conquest GRS Racing, that's Danny Cook. And Jim Cox in car number 35, the Riley Motorsports entry. Row 6 of the grid is Bruce Hamilton III for Wolver Racing, car number 60, and Joel Janko in a 47 Motorsports, car number 47. Car number 23, the Gilbert Quarter of Motorsports entry for John Brownson. Alongside him is Dean Baker in a number 54 for MLT Motorsports. Row 4, Stephen Thomas making his professional racing debut this weekend and doing very well to qualify the car number 11 for K2R Motorsports in the 8th position. Alongside him is Dan Goldberg in car number 6, that's Performance Tech Motorsports. The two Sean Creech Motorsports entries will start together on row 3. Number 30 is Naj Hussain. Alongside him is Lance Wilsey in car number 33. In the 4th position on the grid, David Grant for 47 Motorsports. In car number 40, alongside him, Cameron Castles in car number 75 for Performance Tech Motorsports. That's the top-placed Ligier chassis on the grid. On the front row, it's all Norma M30 for Nielsen Racing, a European team making its North American debut. In car number 17, an excellent qualifying effort for Rob Hoders. But on the pole position, in car number 64 for K2R Motorsports, his first ever pole position, just his 6th professional race. That's Naveen Rao, who will start on the pole position.
You talk about the different chassis, Jeremy. 3 different chassis represented in the field today. The Norma chassis, the Ligier, and then the Ave Riley. So 3 very different types of cars. They've got different aerodynamic signatures, different straight line, different mechanical grip signatures as well. And that mechanical grip today, I would think, would be at an absolute premium. You want to be able to get that Michelin grip of that rain tire to the ground, especially in the infield. The aerodynamics, well, they'll take care of some of that downforce of the grip on the high banks. But when you get to braking, when you get to the infield, you're going to want that mechanical grip. The aerodynamics also helping in the braking zones. But this is going to be a very, very treacherous 3.56 miles of asphalt here with the rain coming down. For Naveen Rao, not a lot of experience. You said it, and he's about to get baptized by fire or rain, I should say, because this is very different than last year. Last year we saw rain in qualifying and a dry race. This year, completely the opposite. Dry this morning for qualifying, and then some monsoons just a little while ago. A lot of standing water on the racetrack. Kind of slowed to a little bit of a drizzle, but still treacherous conditions.
Yeah, very, very much so. And for Naveen Rao, I mean, like I say, this is just his 6th professional start. He didn't do the final race of last season at Michelin Raceway Road Atlanta, but he's back for a full campaign again this year in a 64 car. They made the switch relatively late from a Ligier to a Norma, and in fact they've only done a couple of days of testing in this car. Crucially, however, perhaps one of those days was in the wet, so he does have some wet weather driving experience.
Lights still on the pace car as they come through the tri-oval and past the stand. It'll be interesting to see if the officials decide to go with a single file start here or a side-by-side start, but they're going to give the field another look at this racetrack because these drivers literally throughout the weekend have not seen it with the water on it yet. You want to take a bit of a reconnaissance lap, I would think, and try to determine where the puddles are, where those streams are. Think about this. Water runs downhill. You get to the banking, and if in the heavy rain, that water is going to be coming down the banking at a pretty good clip. This frontal system coming through, there's going to be more rain coming through as well. So the drivers are just trying to get an idea of what they're going to have to work with. I would think the other thing they're going to try to do is get some temperature in the brakes. Hard to get temperature in the Michelin rain tires right now, but at least you got a reconnaissance lap so that you can figure out where things are. You notice that the clock has started, so the race officially has started now. So we'll start this race under yellow. It will be a single file start because effectively it's a restart when the officials decide to get this going. Really, probably one of the best people to talk about these cars, this racetrack, the weather conditions, and everything else. Who better than a defending champion in the class? And unfortunately, Austin McCusker, you're standing up here with us in the booth, and you're not behind the wheel of a car right now. I know you've got big plans for the season. We'll talk more about that in a moment. Tell us about what's going through the drivers' minds right now.
Keep it on track. They definitely don't want to. They don't want to get in the grass because it's going to be very hard to get out of the grass in this condition. But pretty much keep it clean for their silver drivers to pretty much take it home is what they really want to do. Just stay clean all the way through their stint.
Well, you drove here last year in the rain. What's the infield like? What's the banking like? A lot of people think, oh my God, 170 plus miles an hour around the banking. Which one's more challenging, 60 or 80 miles an hour in the infield or 170 on the banking?
The banking's not, it's not really that crazy, to be honest. It kind of carries you all the way through, but you just got to worry about the puddles in the infield and the bus stop definitely because you're carrying a lot of speed through there, so you really got to worry about that.
It's definitely a mind over matter thing though, isn't it? Because the banking, you think, well, that's going to be really, really scary, but the downforce of the car, even in the rain, you can pretty much hold it flat all the way around the banking part.
Definitely.
Yeah. It's amazing, but that's definitely a mind over matter. And for the lesser experienced drivers,
definitely.
Yeah,
exactly. It was not definitely for me standing
definitely
here.
for somebody with experience, but there's quite a few guys in this field who don't have a lot of experience. There's several making their professional racing debuts this weekend. So for them, they don't know what it's like. You don't know that you can do what to somebody like Austin McCusker is second nature. For these guys, it's most definitely not.
Oh, absolutely. You look back through, and that's the great thing about the Prototype Challenge category. It's for drivers to work their way up, or for other drivers without a lot of experience, drivers who don't make their living driving race cars, to come and experience prototype competition, but with a little less horsepower, about 425 horsepower or so, a little less horsepower, a little less speed, if you want to call 178 miles an hour or less speed, but it gives them that opportunity to learn, but they come here without a lot of experience with that high speed and that close competition. So definitely a big learning curve. Looking through Stephen Thomas back in the number 11 car, one of those drivers without a lot of experience. He just started racing 13 months ago. He's a very well-established attorney. Lights are off. No, lights are still on the safety car. Well-established attorney out in Los Angeles, and 13 months ago he decided, got a taste of racing at a car event and said, I want to do this. Hired Ross Bentley, who's one of the better coaches, very well known for some of his books, Speed Secrets. Hired Ross Bentley to work with him, and over the last 13 months, I think he's driven just about anything with four wheels on it. Ross has him working very hard, but think about this. 13 months after you step in a car the first time on a racetrack, you're at Daytona International Speedway behind the wheel of a prototype. Austin, I mean, That's a big jump.
It's definitely a big jump. I mean, to be 13 months, you jump right into one of these LMP3 prototypes. It's kind of crazy.
How long did you drive before you got to prototype?
I drove cars for probably 3 to 4 years before I jumped into the prototype.
And before that, were you in karting?
I was in karting since I was 7 years old. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's a steep learning curve, that's for sure. But you look here, he's got one of the best coaches in the business in Ross Bentley, and his co-driver this weekend, Thomas Merrill. He's a youngster, relatively youngster as well. He's 33 years of age now. That's amazing to think he's that old. But he's an accomplished driver coach himself, so he'll be on the radio to his co-driver and telling him exactly what the things to look out for, the things to be careful of. But as you say, with the coaching that he's had over the last 13 months, he's got a pretty broad range of experience under his belt already for one who's so new to his racing career.
Lights now off on the safety car. It went from a pace car to a safety car after the green flag officially flew in the race started. So it's now a safety car, but the lights are off, leads the field. And I think that's a great call by Todd Snyder, who's the race director here for Prototype Challenge, to make this a single file restart by going green in the beginning behind the pace car. That gives them the opportunity to head down into turn one. It gave them an opportunity to look at the racetrack for a couple of laps. What's going through the drivers' heads right now, Austin? They've had a couple of laps to look at. They've not seen this track before in the rain. It's all brand new. What are they thinking? What can you say?
If I was driving, I'd just say get through turn one, get through the first lap. Don't put any foot wrong, and then just as the laps progress, you just start pushing the car a little bit more and more, and you adapt as quick as you can. But
I remember the first rain race I ever did a long time ago now. It was at Silverstone, actually. It was quite a big race, and the first few laps, I started quite a long way down the field. It was a long-distance race, and the first few laps, I kind of just drove around on the inside of the racetrack, trying to avoid all the spray. I couldn't believe how little you could see. I mean, I've been watching racing even for that time for many years. But it's still quite an experience when you get out there and there's blanket of spray in front of you. So that's something that for some of these drivers it's going to be another new test.
About to go green, lights off on the safety car from here at Daytona International Speedway. The first race of the new year for any series in the International Motorsports Association. That series, Prototype Challenge, as the lights off, the safety car should dive to pit lane, and we will go racing after heavy rain falling here in the last 15 to 20 minutes. And now Naveen Rao on the pole, waiting and looking. Two Norma chassis up front, and a huge jump by Rao over Rob Hodis. Leaves Hodis in the dust as they come past the line. And for Naveen Rao, a good 10 or 12 car lengths out in front, but now the treacherous braking down into turn one. Lights flashing, the rain lights on the back of these Prototype 3 machines. And for Austin McCusker, down in that brake zone in the wet, the drivers, are they having to deal with that transition off the banking and into the flat?
A little bit, but it's not that.
Is that David Grant up into second place? I think it is for 47 Motorsports there. He started on the outside of the second row, and Rob Hodis, he's slipping back way down through the field, already back to 6th or 7th place, and it's certainly taking him a long time to get up to speed in these conditions.
Now, it'll be interesting because on an original start, you're not allowed to pass before the start-finish line. Grant certainly did that, but this was not the original start, so this should be considered a restart. His move, I would think, would be then legitimate.
It seems legitimate to me. I mean, we'll see what race control says about it, but hopefully that, like you said, it was actually considered a restart, so we'll see how that pans out. David
Grant, his brother Keith, sharing that 40, a Norma chassis. They ran in the Ligier the last couple of years, so this is a different chassis for them. It's a different field. Talking to them earlier, it's a completely different aerodynamic signature in the Norma chassis. That's something they've got to get used to. They've had a couple of spins, a little whoopsie here and there throughout the weekend, but no problem at all for David Grant there. As you look at the start, Naveen Rao just blasting away from everybody at the start across the line, and there's the move by Grant down into the inside across the line as the green flag waves. I'm impressed right now with the field, Austin, in that, and I shouldn't say this, I need to find some wood to knock on here. It seems to be pretty clean under what are definitely treacherous conditions, but what a run by Naveen Rao.
Yeah, he had a great start. I mean, it definitely seemed like he went a little early, but he's got a gap on the field, which is great for him, and it seems like they're battling for second and third right now.
Yeah, second and third and fourth really close as they come up to the try over the summits. This is David Grant in the second position, and right behind him is Cameron Castles in third position, and Lance Wilsey is right there as well in that red, white and blue, or white, red and blue Sean Creech Motorsports Ligier.
And you look at Cameron Castles, here's a guy who once again does not make his living driving race cars, but you would think he did with the number of cars that he drove last year in that blue with the yellow highlights, the number 75, the Ligier chassis. He ran in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America, which is an IMSA series. He ran in the IMSA WeatherTech LMP2 category, actually won in the class at Sebring. He's driven all kinds of sports cars, and a problem for the 35. That is Jim Cox in the Ave Riley chassis that we talked about, the only one in the field. No harm, no foul. He's back underway. But we were talking about Cameron Castles and the great job that he's doing. He is just determined to immerse himself in motorsports and get as much education as he can. And I think that education across a broad spectrum of cars has really suited him well, and it's taken him from being a pretty good race car driver to a good racer. And there's a difference. There are guys who are quick in race cars, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're a good race car driver.
Yeah, I mean, there's a total difference between putting a fast lap down and then, racing well. So Cameron's definitely exceeded that over the past couple of years with the amount of series, amount of driving he's done.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Austin. He's driven all sorts of different cars, and I think that for many, in many ways, there was a real breakthrough made by Cameron in the WETA, actually, at VIR. Not last year, but the year before, I think it was. Yeah, the year before. And he really had a good, strong run in the wet there. So it's good to see that he's maintaining that sort of form here in the early stages of this race. And now we've got the first place car for the rebound. He's has lost a position as they head on to the banking, and right behind him, that's in the number 6 car, Dan Goldberg in the Motel 6 entry. Wow, what a great start Dan Goldberg has made. He's got a lot of experience in the old IMSA Light prototypes, but it was out of top line competition for quite a few years. He has been racing in NASA competition, won a national championship last season in a BMW, but he's driving really nicely now in the early stages. Into the pit lane comes car number 40 for David Grant as a drive-through penalty for a jump start.
Well, there's the conversation that we had, and it was trying to determine whether they would consider it a restart or a start. Obviously, Grant paying the penalty there. Must have gotten a call off the bus stop and hesitated a little, but looks like he checked up. That caused Cameron Castles to have to check up as well, I believe. And in so doing, Wilsey was by, Goldberg was by in the blink of an eye. And that's a place where you don't want to get caught out coming off the bus stop because it's a long run back to turn one.
And what was particularly unfortunate there for David Grant was the fact that he was on the outside. He was just well, he should have been on the outside. It was a single file start, admittedly, but he was. It was such a slow start by Rob Hodis. What's he supposed to do? He sees the green flag coming out. He wants to get on. He can see already that Naveen Rao is on the gas and pulling away, and he's sort of kind of trapped there. So he knows where to put the hammer down and try and chase him down. Unfortunately, he's got a penalty for that. And the fastest lap of the race on that last lap, a 2 minutes 11.4. That is for Dan Goldberg in car number 6.
And a problem for Goldberg.
Now spun.
That's turn 6, I believe, onto the Super Speedway. And
turn 6, car number 6, Motel 6.
Yeah,
okay,
I don't know if he had a problem, i.e. contact, or just lost it on his own as he comes through there. Take a look. Oh, tight quarters indeed. Look at that. There's Naveen Rao and Wilsey by. And a problem. Looks like the 6 car spins on its own, but for Wilsey, a powerful move up the inside alongside Naveen Rao. I believe Lance Wilsey out in the lead now. Indeed, through Super Speedway turn 4 and into the tri-oval.
How cool is that? I mean, what a super enthusiast is Lance Wilsey. He's driven absolutely beautifully here. He ran the Michelin Encore at Sebring at the end of last year, or I should say was supposed to run the Sebring Encore in this team with Oliver Askew, the last year's Indy Lights champion, moving up to IndyCar this season with the Smith SP McLaren Arrow team. But unfortunately, they weren't able to start the race because of a problem before the start. So Lance Wilsey now he's got a different co-driver for this weekend in that car number 33, but it's a veteran driver in Anthony Lazzaro, and Anthony will be absolutely thrilled to see that car out in the front in the early stages of this race. A great effort there by Lance Wilsey. Just set the fastest lap of the race, 2 minutes 6.1. The only guy who was the only other driver below 2 minutes and 10 seconds on that last lap were the third and fourth place cars of Cameron Castles in car number 75 in third place, and right behind him Dean Baker is also moving up very nicely indeed in car number 54, having started from the 9th position.
You talked about Anthony Lazzaro as you see a problem for the 30 off the pace. Lazzaro has kind of resurrected his career, a great coach, and he's been coaching a lot lately. He said, I had a chance to drive last year and it just kind of reignited the fire inside of me. I went back, I went to the gym, I got more in shape, and I'm fired up, I'm back in it. This is the 30 now stopped.
Yeah, that's Marsh Hussein, and he and Wayne Boyd came in here with super high expectations. That's the teammate for Sean Creech Motorsports, and number 30 and number 33, but number 33 car seems to be in fairly serious trouble.
And that's not what Lance Wilsey, as the leader, wants to see. He's got 1.6 plus seconds in hand over Naveen Rao the last time by the line, and now with a stalled car on the racetrack, that could bring out, and indeed it does, a full course caution. That lead is now gone. He worked so hard for it. Austin, you're out there in front, and now all of a sudden you're pulling away, and then the yellow comes out. What do your spirits do?
I mean, you get to take a little bit of a break, but you're only 15 minutes into the race. But for some other drivers, I'm sure they're happy. It's good for David Grant and Keith Grant. They're going to gain some time back and drive through penalties. So I'm sure they'll be excited. But for the leader, it's usually not the best. He did come from, I don't know where he started, but he came from a little bit further back, and now he's up in the lead. So I'm sure he won't have a problem stretching the gap.
There is the safety team to the stricken number 30 car that had been running in the 8th position prior to this problem, stopped out on the racetrack, and if we'd run down the order, then 6 laps completed. We are better part of 20 minutes already into this race. It's Lance Wilsey who leads for Sean Creech Motorsports in the Ligier, car number 33 in second position. The pole sitter, Naveen Rao, for K2R Motorsports, and the Norma car number 64 in third position for Performance Tech Motorsports, another Ligier, that's car number 75. And behind Cameron Castles is Dean Baker in the car number 54, that's for MLT Motorsports, another Ligier. And rounding out the top 5, Rob Hodis, who started on the front row of the grid in car number 17, another Norma M30.
Safety crew working on getting the stricken number 30 off the racetrack. That brings out the first full course caution here at Daytona International Speedway, just 18 minutes into this 3-hour event. And for Lance Wilsey, I'm sure he's disappointed, but what he knows is he's got a good car underneath him. So when you think about that, Austin, okay, I know I can do it. I know I took it there. So he's got a clean shot on the restart when it comes. So perhaps things not so bad. Yeah, gives him a chance to breathe.
Yeah, definitely not so bad. He should. He just got to take it easy on that first lap. Make sure that the second place of Rao doesn't get in front of him, and then pretty much put his head down, and he'll stretch the gap. I'm sure he had some good pace going into this first caution.
Lined up behind the BMW safety car, Lance Wilsey with a strong move on pole sitter Naveen Rao to take over that lead just before the full course caution came out. It'll be interesting to see when we go back to green if he can extend the lead. It shouldn't be a very long yellow, I wouldn't think. The number 30 stalled at the exit of the International Horseshoe. Safety crews on hand. They'll get that car at multiple places to pull it off right now and get it out of the way, and then we can go back to racing. The very first race in the 51st season of IMSA sports car action here in the United States. The IMSA Prototype Challenge at Daytona. There's more coming your way. Lance Wilsey in the 33, that beautiful red, white, and blue Ligier leads the field behind the safety car, Naveen Rao. Then Cameron Castles. That's the top three. And interesting, it's a Ligier chassis in the front, then a Norma chassis, then a Ligier there in third place. And Austin, you had a chance to drive the Norma chassis, I believe. The Ligier, when you drove the Norma, what did you think of the strengths and the weaknesses of the Ligier, and how did you play the strengths of the Norma up against what you thought were the weaknesses of the Ligier?
Well, obviously the Norma seems to be a little bit better in the higher speed. It seems to be a little bit better in the higher speed corners and in the brake zones. It has a little bit more of a straight line speed, but then you get into the Ligier and it has a little bit quicker steering. It seems to heat the tires up a little bit quicker. So in this condition, in the rain, on these Michelin wet weather tires, I think that the Ligier will definitely get up to speed quicker than the Norma, but the Norma will then take a few more laps to get going.
Be interesting. These Michelin rain tires seem to be a very good tire. Not a lot of standing water right now. I think that's what you want as a driver, but you talk about temperature. I think maybe for some of the fans that are standing down in the infield and the fans that are watching, whether that's through the internet or at home, temperature isn't something that they're used to talking about in tires, but it really, on a rain tire, it's critical, is it not?
Yeah, it's very critical. I mean, you don't want to overheat them, and then you don't want to make sure they're not cool enough as well. So you definitely want to make sure you have the heat in the tire and the right tire pressure and everything there.
There's the 40 car. David Grant behind the wheel. That drive-through penalty for the jump start, he's back up to 10th, and obviously this full course caution will help David move that car back towards the front.
Yeah.
And here's a look at the initial start, and the thing that's kind of somewhat interesting to me is that I almost considered this a restart since the start had happened, and per the rules that I just looked at in the rule book, you're allowed to pass once it goes green. So perhaps David Grant had pulled out a line before the green flag waved.
Look, I mean, I think he probably thought that the second place car had a problem because he could see Naveen Rao driving away, and the number 17 car that was second in line just didn't accelerate at all.
The flag has to wave to signify, and perhaps it was the move before the flag.
Well, I don't think he went before the flag. I think he went before the start-finish line, because that's the critical thing at the start of the race. Is not it's the start-finish line.
But that's okay on a restart.
Which this wasn't. This was the start.
Yeah,
I think
that's the argument I'm sure people are going to have.
Well, but the bigger argument, though, is the fact that the number 17 car just didn't accelerate at all once the green came out.
You and I could sit here and talk about it all day long. What would the driver...
He'd be out front. He'd be the guy pulling away out front. He is, by the way, the qualifying lap record holder here at Daytona International Speedway. That is Austin McCusker.
All right, Austin.
From 2 years ago,
so you're
right?
Sitting there in fourth. You just saw it.
It's kind of hard to say because Rao really got a good start. You would think that the second place guy had a problem, and I mean, I would have thought about going around. I would have think that it would have been fine to go around him, but I guess not, obviously, according to race control. So, that's how I would have thought about it.
Always better to ask forgiveness than permission. It doesn't seem that asking for forgiveness this time worked.
Yeah, no.
But the good thing for David is 3-hour race, still 2 hours and 37 minutes to go. The full course caution comes out, brings him right back to the field. He's got a good car underneath him, it looked like in those first couple of laps. So all is not lost by any stretch of the imagination. I remember last year when cars elected not to qualify in the rain and started at the back and worked their way to the front. It's a 3-hour race. You got plenty of time.
Yeah, you got plenty of time, and he's just got to keep his nose clean, make the right passes at the right time, and chip his way through, and more and more pit stops, hopefully pick up a couple spots there, and then go from there.
Well, we'll see what Lance Wilsey is able to do when we go back to racing from here at Daytona International Speedway. Round one of the 2020 IMSA Prototype Challenge Series, and round one for any IMSA series in 2020. Safety car across the line one more time. Lights still on. Will it be interesting to see if the lights go out this time as we look out on to the Daytona International Speedway road course. No sign of any safety vehicles. No sign of the stricken number 30. Interesting pit stop going on now for the 61. And is this a strategic move, or is there a problem with this car? George Stakos Danny.
They're going to fuel that car, and we're over half an hour. We're what, 25 minutes into this race, and basically, I think that these cars with a reduced fuel tank this year from 100 litres down to 85. A significant reduction in fuel size, 15%. They can't go as long on a tank of fuel as they could before. They're definitely going to have to make 3 pit stops during this race. And I think the window to make that stop was about 25 minutes or so. We've had that elapsed now, so they can make that stop under yellow. They still have to meet the minimum time from pit entry to pit exit of 115 seconds, but they are allowed to refuel that car under yellow flag, and that I think could be a very good call for the number 61 team. That's the Eric Bachelard is the team principal there of Conquest GRS Racing, and Eric Bachelard has been around this sport a long time. He won the Indy Lights Championship himself a few years ago. I can't remember who finished second in the championship that year, Brian Tiller, can you?
I remember that he won the Indy Lights.
You do remember that, do you? Yeah.
I do. Lights out on the safety car right now, and that means we're going back to green at Daytona. Lance Wilsey, what kind of chassis does he have underneath him? How good is that Ligier going to be on the drop of the green for David Grant? Is he going to be a little more in line before he pulls the trigger? We'll have to wait and see. And for Naveen Rao, who got a little loose, I think, into turn 6, checked up, maybe lost the car a little bit because he had a substantial lead heading into turn 6. And then Wilsey just pounced and got the inside line, got the lead in that move. What's Naveen going to do? He knows he's got a good driver to hand the 64 over to in his co-driver. So what's he going to do? Is he going to think, hey, I just got to keep this car. I'll keep it here in second place for Matt Bell. We know Matt Bell, a very, very talented race car driver. So right now you're thinking the teammate side of things is really important, isn't it, Austin, in this thing? You're thinking, hey, I've got a car. I've got to be able to give it to my teammate so he can go.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, this is more of a Pro-Am series. You have the gentleman drivers starting the race, and you want to be able to give your car clean to your pro driver, and that's what I think you should do.
That's exactly right, and that's one of the things that's changed for this season. Last year, there's 4 categories of driver in the international scale, from platinum, gold, silver, and bronze. Only silver and bronze drivers are allowed to race in this championship. Last year, though, you could run 2 silvers, which is what Austin McCusker alongside it now did last year with a fellow silver, Rodrigo Fluker. But for this year, there has to be at least 1 bronze driver in each of the cars. So that's changed the dynamic slightly, and as Brian was saying earlier on, it is the bronze-rated driver who has to start the race and qualify the car. The safety car is in.
And that means every driver in the car right now is a bronze, and Lance Wilsey, the bronze driver, leads the field past the green, and off we go. David Grant with another big jump at the start, picks up several positions. Wilsey holding on to the lead down into turn 1, but some good side-by-side action. I think Rob Hodes, Stephen Thomas, side-by-side across the line. Baker in there as well, and right now Cameron Castles with a great run off turn 2, beginning to put pressure on Naveen Rao just behind Lance Wilsey. Castles in the blue and yellow 75, and joining him the 54, Dean Baker, really all over the back of Cameron Castles as they head down towards the King.
Yeah, exciting stuff, and we saw that number 61 car make a pit stop. Maybe that hasn't worked in its favor because that car has it's back out on the racetrack, but it's at least a half a lap down to the rest of the field because it had to serve that minimum pit stop time of 115 seconds because they did take on fuel. That car is now 53 seconds behind the leader as they go on to lap 9 with just over half an hour in the books in this 3-hour race.
Naveen Rao with another little slip up coming off of turn 6, but good battles back behind him. David Grant trying to move forward just in front of him now, I believe. 11 of Stephen Thomas trying to move forward after that penalty on the initial start. But Rao seems to have a bit of a problem in turn 6 again, getting the power down. Wilsey did not, and that's allowed Cameron Castles to look to the outside, side by side into the braking zone for the bus stop, and Castles around the long way and gets the job done. Impressive stuff. How difficult is that to do?
That's definitely impressive. I mean, he got
and a big wobble coming off. He goes across that standing water. Cameron Castles does. That blocks his acceleration. He's got to get out of the throttle wheel. Naveen Rao says, thank you very much. I'll take it right back.
That was great racing by both of those two. What a move that was by Cameron Castles around the outside. He just got by Purple, by the way, in sector 2. That's leading down to the bus stop. But he's going to have to do it all again now. He's back into 3rd position.
Castles takes a deep breath, gets things back under control, and just behind them, David Grant working his way up from 10th on the start. He's gotten past the 17 of Rob Hodis. He's gotten past the 6 of Dan Goldberg, and he's moving forward. Another full course caution would help him immensely catch up, but he's got a good car underneath him right now, that Norman chassis, and he's putting it to good use as he's moving his way forward. I think he's been able to mentally put that mistake behind him and just focus forward, and that is where he is headed right now. The next car in line for Grant is Dean Baker in the 54, well up the road. Look at this battle, the 17 of Hodis and the 6
of Dan Goldberg, moving back up through the field again after that spin at turn 6 a little while ago. So he's now having dropped as low as he actually dropped as low as 13th position. He was 12th at the restart, and now with that lead past number 17 going back inside the top 6 for Dan Goldberg from South Florida.
Lance Wilsey maintains the point out front, 1.8 seconds ahead. Treacherous conditions here at Daytona International Speedway. Good battles all the way around Daytona International Speedway. Round 1 of the 2020 IMSA Prototype Challenge Series. Lance Wilsey out in front. Naveen Rao and Cameron Castles have been having a great go of it. But Castles, with that little slip up, literally and figuratively out. Second place back around, and it's really allowed Dean Baker in the 54 to close back up on the rear wing of Castles. A good battle going on here now for 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, that's right. And David Grant moving up behind those two as well. A little bit of a gap back to David, who did serve that drive-through penalty after jumping the start, being held up for jumping the start. But at the front of the field now, Lance Wilsey, he's being closed down by Naveen Rao, who's clearly now coming more comfortable in these conditions.
A couple of things to think about. Rain, you're going to get better fuel mileage, but fuel mileage can be an issue. When you drove last year, Austin, 100 liters in the fuel cell. Teams running well beyond an hour 15 minutes at some point in time. Now, Daytona will use fuel because you're at full throttle for a lot of the time, but the rain brings fuel savings, does it not? And this year you need that. You've got an 85-liter fuel cell. They took 15% of the fuel away, and that means the stints are going to be a lot shorter as far as fuel goes.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of caution period. It took a while to get the race to start, and then that first caution period, it saved a lot of fuel. I heard a couple of teams talking about having to do maybe a 4th stop, a quick splash, but I think that that eliminates that now. I think they're going to be down to 3 stops.
Lance Wilsey, his lead, 1.8 seconds at the line the last lap, but this last time by, down to just 0.6 of a second. So Wilsey must have had some type of a problem, maybe a little slip up like we saw Cameron Castles. The racetrack changing right now literally every lap. And that's allowed that trio, Naveen Rao, Cameron Castles, Dean Baker, to close back up. As I said, just 0.6 of a second at the line the last time by. When you make those little mistakes, how difficult is it to put it behind you? Because it literally is behind you. You need to leave it back there, do you not?
Yeah, definitely. You gotta put it behind you. You gotta focus forward. That's what you gotta do. But I think the Norma takes a little bit longer to get to that, like you said. Maybe these cars will start.
Yeah, and as you say, Brian, conditions definitely changing. I think it's stopped raining right now. The track is still pretty wet out there, but you can see that I think it's drying out just a little bit, and there's a lot of blue sector times, even some purple sector times. Blue being personal improvements for each of the cars, purple being fastest overall. Lance Wilsey, he was purple in sector 1 on this lap. Cameron Castles was purple in sector 2 on this lap, and in sector 3 as well. Cameron Castles here trying to make a move on the...
It's the 64.
He's made it through, hasn't he?
That was your pole sitter, and once again, a strong move by Cameron Castles under braking in that Ligier chassis. And defending champion Austin McCusker with us here in the booth, Brian Till and Jeremy Shaw. That, you said, was one of the strengths of that Ligier chassis. It brakes very well. It's got a good aerodynamic signature as far as downforce go. And right now, Cameron Castles, even in the wet, seems to be able to use that to his advantage.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he had a little bit of a slip-up getting by Rao at the restart, but now it seems like he's got his head down and he's pushing to go against Wilsey now.
Cameron Castles up to second place, and on the radio for Lance Wilsey, they are going to let him know there's a new second place contender, and Cameron Castles has his sights set squarely on the rear wing of that 33 in front. Can Cameron Castles close down and take the lead here at Daytona? 1.8 second lead for Lance Wilsey the last time by at the line, but it was over Naveen Rao because shortly past the start-finish line, second place change. Cameron Castles jumped into that position, and it looks, Jeremy Shaw, like he's able to start making ground immediately on Lance Wilsey, our leader.
Yeah, he made up a couple of tenths in the first sector on this lap. He's made up another tenth of a second in the second sector, has Cameron Castles on the race leader. So he's doing his darndest now to reduce that gap. He seems to have got through the bus stop a little bit better this time than he did a couple of laps ago. But this is a super battle out in these top four positions. They're still kind of equidistant apart now, maybe a second or so in between each of the top four cars. But Dean Baker in fourth position in car number 54 for MLT Motorsports. He's doing a fine job to hang on there. And then there's a big gap back to David Grant, who's made his way all the way back into fifth position. But he's got quite a deficit to make up to the top four cars.
It looks like Dan Goldberg indeed has gotten past David Grant. So right now, with the conditions changing on the racetrack, you're kind of exploring every lap. And Austin, I've always said to young drivers, if it's shiny, it's slick. And right now, in these changing conditions, without rain falling on the racetrack heavily, you can see some areas that seem to be a bit dull, other areas that seem shiny. Is that pretty much the case here? If it's shiny, is it slick?
Yeah, usually like that. That's just the way we think about it. You know, there's probably going to be a dry line forming soon if it stops raining. It looks like it has, so definitely going to be looking for a dry line. But you want to make sure you don't overheat those Michelin tires.
How challenging is that, though? Because as the dry line begins to form, you don't want to overheat the tires, but you need the rain tire to make the pass with, because to pass, you have to go offline, and offline is wet. So those are some of the most treacherous conditions you can drive in, are they not?
Definitely when there's a dry line and you're trying to pass someone and obviously the offline is wet. At that point, it's you just got to make the smartest decision and not make sure you don't brake too late.
Outbrake yourself.
Yeah, pretty much.
New fastest race lap last time around for Cameron Castles in the second place machine. That's car number 75 for Performance Tech Motorsports in South Florida. That blue and yellow car, new color scheme from last year for Cameron Castles. Boy, what a good job he's doing. He's really he's obviously super confident. We saw that with his move around the outside into the bus stop, but having a big slide on the exit, he's clearly got the confidence back after that little moment, and he's now trying to track down Lance Wilsey, who still leads this race. But on this lap, it was purple in Sector 1, fastest of all for Lance Wilsey, but still the second place car is definitely inching closer. Across the line they go, less than a second then between Lance Wilsey and Cameron Castles, and all of a sudden the third place car for Naveen Rao is a full 4 seconds back.
Cameron Castles carving away at the lead that Lance Wilsey has. And if you're from the north and you're watching this, we were talking about if it's shiny, it's slick, it's like walking outside on a freezing day and you see those little glossy patches, you know that's black ice, and that's what this racetrack is like right now. These drivers trying to conserve that soft Michelin rain tire and trying to avoid the slick areas. You want to try to find a puddle every now and then to get the temperatures down to help cool them, but at the same point in time, you're trying to keep your competition off your rear wing, and that's exactly what Lance Wilsey in that beautiful red, white, and blue 33 is trying to do. But Cameron Castles has closed the lead to within a second, and it's that ebb and flow, that battle. You're like tiptoeing on that black ice to take the garbage out. And right now, Lance Wilsey wants to get to the curb first and get back to the house because he wants to maintain that lead, but it is a very, very delicate balance out front.
It is, and a new fastest lap again for Cameron Castles in second position. A 2 minutes 1 now, 0.502, 2 minutes 0.1 in wet conditions. That's pretty darn good.
Also, let me ask you this. I've heard drivers say, yeah, I like to run in the rain, but I don't want to lead in the rain. We still have 2 hours and 20 minutes to go. Are you content to run second place and let the leader go find the dangerous spots so you can play off of him? Or do you want the lead? Do you want to be out there in front every moment that you can?
I like to lead as much as possible.
Greedy, aren't you?
Yeah, but maybe sometimes in qualifying or practice, you kind of want to be the last guy on track because that's when it's going to be the driest. But in a race condition, you want to lead as much as possible and go from there.
How bad's the spray? I watched the cars through the tri-oval right now as Wilsey comes past the line once again, and you can see that definitive spray. It's not as bad as it was before, but the visibility in these cars, a lot of people would think, well, you're not an open wheel car, so at least you can see, but you got a windscreen in front of you.
Yeah. Definitely, we have a windshield wiper, but it doesn't seem to work that well usually, so you got to make sure you have a lot of Rain-X on there and a lot of everything so it slicks off the windshield.
What about the fog from the inside?
So I think most of these cars have an actual heated windshield, so you don't have to worry about that. So that's the biggest part. If you don't have that, you could definitely have a big fog in the windshield. That would not be good.
Right now, Cameron Castle's lost a half a second. We talked about the give and take here at Daytona International Speedway in IMSA Prototype Challenge. Well, there was that little loss. Either Lance Wilsey had a good run off of a corner or Cameron Castle's tried something that didn't work. And just that quickly, a half a second is gone. And you think, well, it's a half a second. It's not really that much. But a half a second is probably 40, 50 feet down the racetrack at these speeds. And that's the difference of being close enough at the end to perhaps having a draft get you by to the start-finish line. But we've got a long way to go. 2 3-hour races in the 2020 IMSA Prototype Challenge Series. A 3-hour race here at Daytona International Speedway and a second one at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park later in the season. The rest of the race is an hour and 45. And from a driver's perspective, does that change your outlook on a race, or do you just focus and do your job, which is go as fast as you can and don't hit anything?
Definitely go as fast as you can and don't hit anything. But this strategy comes into play a little bit more in the 3-hour races, and like you said, with the lower fuel loads, it'll come into play a lot more.
Some super battles all the way through this field, and there's a long way to go, obviously, in this race, and there's plenty to watch out there as well on the racetrack. But a great lap here for Lance Wilsey. He's been able to extend his lead over Cameron Castles. It wasn't the fastest lap on the racetrack last time around for Lance Wilsey, but it was another 1 minute 2.2. He's turned very consistent laps each of the last 3 times around. But Cameron Castles has been fast, but he's been inconsistent.
I was wondering when we were going to start seeing pit stops, because we've gotten to 2 hours and 18 minutes to go, which means we're past the 40-minute mark. That's the minimum drive time for these drivers, and we're beginning to see pit stops unfold. Part of that strategy to get that bronze driver out in these very treacherous conditions, get your silver driver in, give them the opportunity to perhaps make some hay. If you've lost a little bit of ground, you see the 17 sitting there. Rob Hodis will be climbing out of the 17. That Norma chassis he'll hand over to Garrett Grist, a very talented race car driver from Ontario, Canada. Only 24 years of age, and Grist not only doing work here in the IMSA Prototype Challenge category, but also spent a lot of time in the European Le Mans Series. Third in 2018 over in the European Le Mans Series, so has a lot of experience around the world, most importantly in these LMP3 machines. A problem for the 11, Stephen Thomas. We talked about not a lot of experience. The driver only been driving for 13 months, but I think he's done an exemplary job here in some very difficult conditions in this first 43 minutes of competition here at Daytona.
I completely agree with you, Brian. He's running in the 8th position there and holding off some drivers with a lot of experience behind him. He looks like he's made a mistake there, but he's able to, I think, to get it going again, so that's certainly good news. That number 46 car as well was the first car onto pit lane. Steve Scullin, the third, handing over to Scott Huffaker the second. So I think it'll be Scott driving that car now. And this was the first professional race for Steve Scullin. But he's done a lot of racing in his youth and some historic racing, but this is his first professional outing. And Scott Huffaker, well, he's definitely a young, very, very talented youngster. We'll see what he can do at the wheel of that car number 46.
Well, we talk about the different drivers in the FIA, which IMSA runs under FIA international rules. drivers are listed as either platinum, and those are the factory drivers. Gold drivers, drivers who have won championships. They make their living driving race cars. Silver drivers, typically younger drivers that are trying to work their way up, or there is an age level that you get demoted automatically, and that's another story altogether. And then the bronze drivers, guys that do not make their living driving race cars, but come and run. Austin, you and Rodrigo won this championship under different rules. It's 2 silver drivers in the car. As a silver driver, when you're out there now, I mean, obviously you're going to be out there with a lot of other silvers, but as the series runs through different racetracks throughout the year, you're going to find yourself mixed up, and it's a different dynamic because you're driving with a driver with different experience level. Does that change the mindset of a young silver guy like you if the rules change like that?
Sometimes when you're out there with some bronze drivers, you just got to be aware of your surroundings sometimes. And, as a young driver, you're hungry and you want to get past them as much as possible, but you got to play the patience into the game, and that's what you have to. That's what I usually have to think about when I'm trying to pass a bronze driver. Just think about it like that.
Well, it's not about this corner right now, is it? It's about the end of the race, and you got to get there. I oftentimes talk to young drivers, and you talk to them, and you say, okay, well, that's what you were going to do here, but what were you going to do at the next corner once that happened? Because maybe you didn't really want to be in that position, So it is, you've said, I think multiple times today, something about thinking. It really is a thinking person's game, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not a sprint race, so you got 3 hours to do it all, and it's not going to hurt you. If you wait a lap or a couple corners to get by another driver, and it's like we said, it's an endurance race, so you got to think about the long term.
I think the interesting thing too, Lance Wilsey, Cameron Castles now has slipped back to just over 2 seconds behind Wilsey, so it seems like either Wilsey has some better legs underneath him right now, or Cameron Castles perhaps has burned those Michelin tires off trying to chase down Wilsey out in front. And a problem down on pit lane, we saw the Ave Riley machine in, and the right front wheel has departed that car and is now on the grass down on the infield. Here's a look at Naveen Rao sliding off of one of the hairpins. Shows you just how tricky it is out on the racetrack right now. The 54 Dean Baker, the car in trail and into the West Horseshoe, I believe, and just a little bit of slide. Baker looks up to the inside, and now the run down to turn 6. This is where that slide for Rao happens. Baker looks up the inside, and now it's just a matter of who can get that 425 horsepower to the ground and get onto the super speedway. That was close.
Yeah, very close.
Yeah, it is, and good driving, I think, by both of them to get away with it. But the key to Lance Wilsey at the moment over Cameron Castles is his consistency. Lance Wilsey, again, another personal best lap last time around, 2 minutes 1.341. He pulled out a couple of tenths over Cameron Castles. He's certainly capable of going quicker and has, for much of the race, had the fastest lap race, or 3 of the last 5 laps he had set a new fastest lap of the race. But this last time round it was David Grant in car number 40 in the 5th position who set the new best time in this race, 2 minutes 0.335. That's almost exactly 1 second quicker than Lance Wilsey in the lead of this race for Sean Creech Motorsports. Lance goes across the line one more time, again slightly quicker, 1 minute 2 minutes 1.02 for Lance. There's super consistency by Lance. Look, he's no spring chicken out there. He's 58 years of age, but he's got a huge amount of experience, and all of his experience is being put to good use right now.
Naveen Rao, the pole sitter, now on pit road, and was wondering how long these leaders were going to stay out. And you think that Lance Wilsey and Cameron Castles are turning good laps right now, so run them to the end of the fuel load. Run them as long as you can. If they're making good time on the racetrack, why not leave them out? It'll be interesting to see, speaking of leaving cars out, I wonder if the officials are just letting this pit stop sequence take place because they know that cars are going to be needing to pit right now, because I'm looking at the wheel and tire sitting down on the grass berm just on the way into turn 2. That came off the car of Jim Cox when he came in for a pit stop. The right front wheel departed, and it's sitting down there. That's a heavy assembly sitting very close to the racetrack, and You wonder if the officials won't elect to go get that at some point in time, and the only way to go get it, I would believe, would be to go full course caution. I don't think you want to send a worker out that close to the racetrack when cars are streaming by at 170 plus miles an hour. There that wheel sits. You can see it is in very close proximity to the racetrack. You dive down to driver's left in the braking zone there to turn 1, and it's a long way for somebody to sprint to go get it. You're young, Austin. Would you make that sprint?
I don't know, maybe. I'd have to be very quick about it.
Yeah, I figure when somebody that young and in that kind of shape says, I'd have to think about it, then certainly for you and me, Jeremy, we're not going to run out and get it.
Probably not. There's another, once again, Lance Willsey improves his time, 2 minutes, 0.3. This is super driving by Lance, and now by Cameron Castles, who went a little bit quicker himself, 2 minutes, 0.145. But we got the first sub-2 minute lap of the race set by Scott Huffaker in car 46. He's way at the back of the pack. He's actually a lap down now in the 15th position in car 46, having taken over from Steve Scullen. But Scott Huffaker, the fastest man on track at 159.763. So Lance Willsey there, that's again super consistency. His last few laps, 2 minutes 2.2, 2 minutes 2.1, 2 minutes 2.2, 2 minutes 1.6, then 1.3, 1.0 and 1.0, 2 minutes 0.3 this time around. Super consistency. And all three leaders there lapping with very almost identical times. Number 33 is going to lead about 1.6 seconds over number 75. Dean Baker in third place in car number 54 for MLT Motorsports. Both of those three drivers doing a nice job. There's a pit stop for the Gilbert Courthoff Motorsports, car number 23. That car was started by John Brownson. It'll probably now be Anthony Simoni who will take over at the wheel of the number 23 car.
Lance Willsey still leads here. The first driving stint for him here at Daytona International Speedway in round 1 of the 2020 IMSA Prototype Challenge Series. And he has been out for quite a while, closing in on 52 minutes now. And certainly the rain has helped that because you can't use the throttle as aggressively as you normally would. But that's quite the stint. And if it stays in these conditions, teams are going to start looking at this. If he can get close to an hour, teams are going to start looking at this going, instead of potentially having to do an extra pit stop that they thought coming in here, maybe they'll be able to do it without that extra stop. So really, I think the engineers trying to look right now, and they may even be saying to some of these drivers, hey, save fuel, save fuel. Even in this first stint, you're trying to get a little further down the road. How difficult, though, is it, Austin, when an engineer tells you to save fuel, but, oh, by the way, I want you to maintain your speed?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult. You know, it's hard to grasp your heads around, but, you know, if you're good enough, and I'm sure most of these guys are, they can figure it out. And, you know, a lot of lift and coast and a lot of, you know, late braking, not really like lifting off the gas and then braking later, you know, but definitely going to be a mind game towards the end.
New fastest lap of races this time. It's Garrett Grist in car number 17 who's taken over from Rob Hodis. That was the front row starting car. Back in the 9th position now is Garrett, and he is a lap behind the leaders. So of course, he has already made one pit stop. The leaders have not, so he's got that in his favour. And Garrett Grist, the Canadian, is turning some very quick laps. There's a move, though, change for the lead. Lance Willsey makes a one slight slip, and Cameron Castles is now through into the lead in car number 75.
Well, and I was just thinking about this. I was having a conversation with Gary Grossenbacher a little bit earlier today, the engineer on the 33 for Lance Willsey, and Anthony Lazzaro, one of the best engineering minds in the paddock, whether that's in Prototype Challenge or even down in WeatherTech time in IndyCar, NASCAR, a guy that is incredibly smart when it comes to engineering. And I was wondering if at some point in time they weren't going to start pulling reins back on some of these drivers to perhaps stretch fuel a little bit. But for Lance Willsey, there's the answer. Gary Grossenbacher did not tell him to do a 360 coming onto the banking in turn 6. That's what gets Cameron Castles by. But at this point in time, with that position given up, I wonder if Gary's punching those numbers, like we said, thinking if we can just get him a little bit further, we can eliminate a pit stop. And if your engineer calls you and says, hey, let's save some fuel, I don't care if you have to lose a position, this, that, and the other, how difficult is that for a driver to let a couple of people go going, hey, the benefit, the award may not come right now, but it's going to come in 2 hours and 6 minutes.
Yeah, you definitely have to trust your engineer and the strategy. Once you do that, you're going to have a lot of trust. Then you can, exceed definitely towards the end of the race.
So we've got 8 cars on the lead lap at the moment. Number 75 leads. Cameron Castles has just taken the lead over Lance Wilsey. Dean Baker in third place in car number 54. Dan Goldberg fourth in car number 6. David Grant in car number 40 in the 5th position. Behind him, Stephen Thomas still doing a very nice job. His first ever pro race in 6th position in car number 11. The other cars on the lead lap, Greg Palmer in car number 3 and Dave House in car number 86. Then the first car a lap down, but the fastest car on the racetrack is Garrett Grist in car number 17. 1 minute 57.9 he turned last time around. The race leader, Cameron Castles, 2 minutes 0.9. In fact, Grist will be coming up behind the leaders pretty soon. In the next few laps, he's going significantly faster.
Round 1 of the 2020 IMSA Prototype Challenge Series continues from Daytona International Speedway with Cameron Castles out in front. There's a 1.9 second advantage over Lance Wilsey last time at the line. And I think back to last year, we talked about Cameron Castles driving anything. He took his first victory in the Lamborghini Super Trofeo Championship at Road America and was absolutely elated. If they could keep the 75 car out in front here at Daytona International Speedway, what would that mean to them, Jeremy?
It would mean an awful lot because the first win is always hugely important for anybody. But for anyone, there's another spin. Is that Dave House? No.
Down in turn 1, just at the entry to turn 2, and outside the line right now, so that's good.
That's the last car on the lead lap, Dave House in car number 86. What a story, Dave. He's my hero. He's 76 years of age, if you could believe it, but you'd never know that. From Saratoga in California. He's just an all-round good guy. He was a VP of Intel back in his proper working days. And among his hobbies, he has a winery, he does heli skiing, you name it. Dave House is a real adventurer. And he and his teammate Paul LaHaye, combined age of 140, those two. Absolutely
love it. That's what I like
it.
about that, because it's the only combination I can think of that's older than you and me, Jeremy. So I think that I'm behind those guys. But think about that. What do you want to be doing at 76?
I want to be doing exactly what he's doing.
Exactly what he's doing.
I want to be smart enough to have made the sort of career for himself that he has. It's brilliant.
Great stories all throughout the Prototype Challenge category, and that's what makes this series so great. Young drivers, experienced drivers, and drivers who are just sportsmen here for the love of it. That's what's great about it, and that's what's great about this race, round 1 from Daytona International Speedway. Dave House back underway after his problem in turn 1, but out in front, Cameron Castles somewhat trouble-free over the last several laps. It's not that he hasn't put a wheel wrong throughout the first 58 minutes of competition here. He's had a little mistake here or there. He's been in great battles for the lead, for second place, for third place. Now he finds himself out in front after Lance Wilsey with a problem coming through turn 6 onto the super speedway. Castles took advantage, jumps to the point, and I think we're going to see things like this as this racetrack changes. Austin, you and I were talking about it. The racetrack literally changes every single lap now. Without more rain falling on it, it's different as these 17 cars go by and dry it out a little bit more. Every time you come around another 3+ miles, it's a new racetrack.
Definitely, without a doubt. And you just got to adapt as quick as you can and make sure you don't make those mistakes. But it seems like it's starting to get a little bit darker over this Daytona International Speedway.
Yeah, new best lap of the race there for Cameron Castles. Not the fastest lap of the race, but his best lap. He's now sub 2 minutes, 1:59.6 for Cameron Castles. The quickest car on track that last time around. There was a 1:58.4 by Garrett Grist, and we just saw a glimpse of Garrett Grist trying to get past Lance Wilsey. It looks like he didn't make it though, did he? He caught up though with Lance Wilsey. Lance Wilsey, of course, running second in this race. Garrett Grist is a lap down, having that car already made a pit stop, and they're behind him chasing that black car, Dean Baker. Another really, really good run for Dean.
think this is another time where it's difficult when the pit stops go through, and as a driver you look in the mirror and there's somebody right there who wasn't there before considerably quicker, and you really have to do that mental check, I would think, Austin, and just say, they just came out of the pits, they've got better tires, they've got more fuel, that's their hot shoe driver, but they're a lap down. It's all okay.
Definitely, it's all okay. You got to kind of run your race and go from there, but if you're going to be racing them and towards the end of the race, you kind of want to make it difficult for them, not as easy, but you just got to run your race and make no mistakes.
It's very different than sprint racing because you don't really have that ebb and flow quite as much as you do in these long races, especially at a long racetrack like this, especially back to your go-kart days when you didn't make pit stops and stuff like that. If there was somebody behind you, chances are it was because they were qualified behind you or they're coming up to pressure you, but this is a different ballgame. It's like you said, you've got to run your race, and one more time, there you go with thinking, right?
Yep, endurance racing is thinking, a lot of strategy involved, so definitely not a sprint race.
Lance Willsey, he's not going to let the Garrett Grist make a move on him. He's really upped his game as Lance now. 2 minutes point 3 was his best lap of the race so far in car number 33, running in the second position. He's 3.3 seconds behind Cameron Castles, who again turned that last time was a 2 minutes point 5 for our race leader Cameron Castles. But Garrett Grist is going to be getting a little bit frustrated here if he can't find a way past Lance Willsey. There's a mistake for the fourth place car. That's the third place car of Dean Baker. Had a grassy excursion there, and he was running just a couple of seconds behind Lance Willsey. He was chasing that pair, Lance Willsey and Garrett Grist. The pair of them, Grist and Willsey, not on the same lap. Grist is a lap down, but it's a mistake there from Dean Baker, and that is David Grant is next in line in the fourth position, but he was 8 seconds back as they came across the start-finish line.
Well, for Dean Baker, when you talk about driver lineups, a problem for the 33, Willsey beginning to wonder if perhaps he's gotten the best out of those Michelin rain tires as he's struggled the last couple of laps, getting power down, especially coming off of some of these corners. Be interesting to see if that drops him back. Dean Baker was 6 seconds behind him, but that may have been more than a 6-second mistake. And as what we were saying, Austin, it's one of those deals where the racetrack changing every single lap. This is where he had the problem the last time. It's the same thing, turn 6. Comes in, gets on that slick pavement. It looks like there's sealer down there.
Yeah, around the car goes. Just carried a little bit too much speed, I think, into the corner, Austin, would you say?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, he's getting a lot of pressure from Garrett Grist behind, and he's just trying to get every little bit he can out of the car, and he just overcooked it a little bit going into turn 6. So, I'm sure he's a little bit mad about that, but he's got to put his head down and try and recover what he can in this stint.
He has indeed, and as Cameron Castles goes past the complete lap 26, you've seen a few more pit stops. Car number 6 was in last time, and also number 11 car is into the pits as well. That is Stephen Thomas, who's got himself up into the 5th position before he brings that car onto pit lane.
For Dean Baker, we were talking just before we saw the problem for Lance Willsey. He's got to remember he's got quite a hot shoe to hand that car over to Dakota Dickerson, who won the F4 championship, and now a problem over in the bus stop. That's the 40. That's a replay coming into the bus stop. I think Grant gets kind of checked up by the cars in front of him. Might have to get on the brakes a little harder than he wants to, and around it goes once again. Seems to have escaped harm, but he has lost positions on the racetrack, or time on the racetrack, I should say. We'll have to wait and see if there are positions lost. The pit stop's going on. Willsey out. Anthony Lazzaro climbing behind the wheel of the 33. And they went more than an hour in that car on that fuel load. And that bodes well for their strategy to the end. What was going to have to be a short pit stop at the end, that may not have to be there anymore. Obviously, if the racetrack continues to dry, fuel will be burned with the higher speeds, but Lazzaro's struggling with the belt a little bit. You can't spend a lot of time sitting still, but at the same point in time, it's not as fast as you can possibly go like we would see in the WeatherTech or the Michelin Pilot Series. There's a minimum pit stop time from the pit in line to the pit out line. It's 115 seconds. So almost 2 minutes that you can spend in there, but it's not spent sitting still. It's spent from the line at pit in until they cross the line at pit out, well around the corner.
It is, but it's at least 45 seconds just to drive through that without stopping your pit box, and then with slowing the car down and getting going again, plus the pit stop itself, it gives you about 66 seconds stationary before you need to be on the move without losing any time relative to the other pit stoppers.
Well, the question is, what's going on with that 33 car? I saw a crew member look at the left wheel, bent down, picked something up, dejectedly slammed it down on the wall, and the car still sits there. And Anthony Lazzaro, from my vantage point, he's out of the car. He's climbed back out of the car.
Well, that was, I think, Lance Wilson certainly made some contact with the tyre barrier there during that spin. He then brought the car back into the pit, so is there damage there to the right rear corner?
It doesn't look significant, and the piece that he set on the wall is just in front of the fuel rig. It looks like some type of a nut. It's not the single lug wheel nut. It's right there in front of the crew member that's holding the hose for the fuel rig. It's sitting on the wall. It's not a big piece, but that's the piece that the crew member slammed dejectedly on the wall, shook his head. And shortly after that, that's when Anthony Lazzaro climbed out of the number 33.
Yeah, that's a shame.
So disappointing. And as I said, Anthony Lazzaro really trying to resurrect his driving career. A guy that probably has more heart than just about anyone I've seen over the years. I remember in his Atlantic career, in his Toyota Atlantic career, when it first started, him showing up at a race at Milwaukee, Wisconsin with a pickup truck and his Atlantic car on an open wheel trailer in the back of it. He won that race over bigger teams that were out there, and consequently moved on in his career and has had some good opportunities along the way. Crew member now trying to explain to Anthony what the issue is.
And Cameron Castles goes past one more time, and again, good consistency now from Cameron. Cameron Castles really settled down, but now hot on his heels is the first car lap down, Garrett Grist. He's now up to 4th position overall, remember, and Garrett Grist, that car has already made one pit stop in 4th position. He's still a lap down, but not for very much longer, because Cameron Castles, as they go through the East Horseshoe, is trying to remain one lap ahead of Garrett Grist. David Grant is now up in the 2nd place in car number 40. Car number 54 is onto the pit lane. That's a 3rd place car. And did we see a spin for number 54 a couple of laps? Because he must have had a spin a couple of laps ago. We saw several other spinners. I don't remember seeing that one.
I'll tell you what I'm impressed with. Cameron Castles certainly has been driving well. We talked about that earlier. We qualified it by mentioning his race win in Lamborghini Super Trofeo at Road America last year. But it's an hour and 6 minutes since this race started. And of anyone that's out there, Cameron Castles has not only been going fast and racing strong, he's done it and been miserly on fuel. Now an hour and 7 minutes since this race started, and Castles still out in front.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily surprised. I mean, there's been the race started under caution. The first 2 laps were under caution. Then we had another full course caution between laps 6 and 9. So that certainly helps. You do tend to use quite a bit less fuel in the wet than you do in the dry. So I'm not surprised he's able to keep going this long, but I don't think he'll be out there for much longer.
I wouldn't think so either. There are only 3 cars that have yet to stop. That's the 54 of Baker, and actually he did just stop. The 40 of Grant and the 75 of Castles, and Castles leads yet another lap here at Daytona across the line, closing in on an hour and 8 minutes on this first fuel load. But for the lead, I say for the lead, it's not for the lead. Castles needs to be aware that the 17 car of Garrett Grist is a lap down, and that was hard fought down in turn 1. Castles held on to it. I think for Garrett Grist, he realized there is no reason to get tangled up in this right now.
Absolutely. Cameron Castles, he just turned his best lap of the race, his first sub at 2-minute lap, a 1:59.4 for Cameron Castles, and yes, he braked a little bit deep for turn 1, but he got away with it, and he maintains the lead and that 1 lap gap. He'll be in the pits, I'm sure, within the next lap or 2. That's really sad news there, that it's even number 33 car being pushed away.
Heartbreak for them, and you look at the car, and I really don't see a lot of damage, and obviously a suspension component could be bent. Perhaps that's why we saw the somewhat erratic driving by Wilsey in those last couple of laps. Maybe that bent part is what made the car so difficult to control. But right now, Cameron Castle's in control of this race. An hour and 9 minutes in, he leads from here at Daytona International Speedway in round 1 of the 2020 IMSA Prototype Challenge Series. You have to wonder for Cameron Castles, does he have fuel in the drink bottle in the 75, the Ligier chassis that leads here at Daytona? Castles, he and just one other car, David Grant, have yet to stop on this first fuel stint. 15% less fuel on board the Prototype Challenge cars than last year. And yes, the rain gives them better fuel mileage because, no, you can't use the throttle nearly as aggressively. The 425 horsepower or so in the back of these P3 cars, you can't feed them the entire time because you can't get grip. But impressive stuff to maintain the speed, to run out in front and still have some of the best mileage on the racetrack right now for Cameron Castles. You would expect to see him handing that car over to 26-year-old Max Handready reasonably soon. I don't know how he could go much further.
No, another great lap though. 159.5 for Cameron Castles there in the lead of this race, and he's still keeping Garrett Grist behind him. There are two other cars that have not yet stopped, in actual fact, but they're both already a lap down to the leaders. Greg Palmer in the Junior 3 Motorsport entry, car number 3. He's running in the 4th position, has not yet stopped. Neither has Dave House, who we saw had a spin earlier on in car number 86. But now we do see the pit stop for the 2nd place car. David Grant will be into the 47 Motorsports team pits to hand over to his brother, Keith.
Brian Till, Jeremy Shaw, and defending IMSA Prototype Challenge champion, one of the two drivers, Austin McCusker, here with us. And I know, Austin, you'd rather be driving one of those cars right now, but you've watched this first hour plus of racing as David Grant in for, looks like fuel only. There's not going to be a driver change. Your impression of this first hour plus?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely been exciting as we thought going into it with the rain, and it seems like it's definitely lived up to its name. We've had the Lance Wilsey car go out, which was, I think a challenge for the win today, and then the Matt Bell car having a problem with the drive-through penalties. So I think those were some two big contenders, but we'll see now after all the pit stops are done where everything shakes out, and see where the second and third stints go.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting because of the cars that have pitted, Garrett Grist is in 3rd place overall, and he leads the next car that has pitted is Jonathan George now, who's taken over from Joel Janko in car number 47, but he's a full, nearly 50 seconds behind Garrett Grist, so huge lead over the rest of them there for Garrett to have made a pit stop. And here now finally comes that number 75 car.
Leader Cameron Castles on the pit road. We saw the 33 of Lance Wilsey, Anthony Lazzaro, push behind the wall moments ago. Not the only car that's out, and need to certainly mention the 10 as the 75 begins its pit stop. The 10 from Robillard Racing, Joe Robillard, Stephen McAleer, did not qualify, did not take the green flag, and that is a massive disappointment for that team. They came here this year looking for a little bit of revenge. Stephen McAleer led this race with Kitten Cook last year in the latter stages when they lost the wheel on the infield portion, and that really dashed his championship hopes. McAleer, the only driver with 2 victories on the season. That team, the only team with 2 victories on the season, and yet dropping out of this race really impacted their championship hopes. So when you look at the 33 going behind the wall, or the 10 not able to even take the start, that does not bode well for their championship hopes. It's not over, but it certainly is a huge setback. And the odd thing about the 10, an engine problem, and they found what they believe to be a sand-like material in the intake. They had had fuel pressure problems that had been getting worse and worse and worse throughout practice, and then eventually in qualifying. And it looks like somehow, some way, there's some type of debris in the intake of that engine, and that is not good news. Not able to take the start here at Daytona as the 75 completes the stop, heads back underway. Remember, 115 seconds is the minimum time that you can spend on pit road. And how difficult is that to time, Austin? I mean, forget whether it's 1:15 or 3 minutes. It's from the line in to the line out. So how does that actually get done? Because there's got to be some guessing in some extrapolation from the time you drop the car and roll to the time you cross the line and pit out.
Yeah, I mean, in our cars last year we had a timer, so it would hit a point going into the pit lane, and then once you stopped in your box, it would count down to when you should leave, and then once you get towards the end, it'll give you a green light or a red light if you're going to go over or under the time allotted that you set to that timer. So usually, you just try and leave when you can, and you can get the exact time when you kick out of the lane.
Yeah, so there is some help for you as a driver, but it's down to the team to set that to calibrate that properly to make sure it doesn't read wrong. We've seen a couple of cars have had penalties for a pit stop being too short, but Cameron Castles was able to retain the lead after making that pit stop to hand over to Max Hanratty in kind of a 75. The gap as they came across the line was 24 seconds, but of course the number 17 car in second place was at full speed. The number 75 was just cruising down the pit lane at the maximum allowed 60 kilometers an hour, so that gap is going to be a lot less than that by the time they both get up to speed. David Grant, he made the pit stop one lap before Cameron Castles and resumes in third position. He's now ahead still of car number 3, which is Greg Palmer. He hasn't yet stopped at all, running in the fourth place, and behind him Jonathan George in car number 47, and then the young Estonian Tristan Vidas in car number 60. He's taken over from Bruce Hamilton, showing some really good laps in that number 60 car.
The question is, when you look at how far the 75 went, can they do it on just one more stop? They went so far, it looks to me like if you do the math to the end of the race, perhaps just one more stop for the 75.
Yeah, I completely agree. And also the number 40, conceivably the number 54 car as well. I don't think there's probably going to be anybody else that can make it that far without that extra pit stop. But that's something that's going to pan out pretty quickly. But now Garrett Grass is through into the lead of the race. Where is Max Hanratty? There he goes. Boy, that was a very conservative outlap for Max Hanratty, and a 10-second lead then for Garrett Grist as they start lap 33. So 32 laps now completed in this 3-hour race. We've got 1 hour and 45 minutes remaining, so that's exactly halfway through the race, isn't it? With an hour 44 to go. That means we've had an hour. What does that mean? No, not quite halfway through the race. Okay, fine. Maths was never my strong suit. An hour and 30 minutes to go would be halfway through this race, so we're 10 minutes away from that. That was a new best lap, by the way, for Garrett Grist in car number 17, the new race leader. The best lap of the race, however, that was set just a few laps ago by Anthony Simoni in car number 23. He's running down in 12th position. That number 23 guy having had a few difficulties early on in the race, but Anthony is charging hard and trying to make up some ground.
Always after pit stops, it's interesting to see how things cycle through and how the order's going to change. You're going to have different drivers in the cars now. It's going to take them a while to adapt. Others, like Garrett Grist, have been in the car a little bit longer. He knows the racetrack right now. He knows those conditions. He knows the grip that he has. Other drivers who have just gotten in, regardless of how talented, regardless of how experienced, are going to have to learn the racetrack, and that's going to take time.
Yeah, I mean, some people will adapt a little bit quicker than others, but get up to speed as quick as possible. That's definitely the name of the game. But we'll have more of the silver drivers in now, so I'm sure the lap time will drop a little bit quicker. It looks like there's a driver starting to form a little bit out here in turn 1, but no rain coming as far as now. We'll see how the times go from there.
I would finally a pit stop. The last car to make a pit stop. No, number 3 car has not yet been in, has it? So number 3 remains in fourth position, has not yet made a pit stop. But Dave House in car number 86, he finally gives up that top 10 position as he brings the One Motorsports car into the pits.
Garrett Grist being shown out front, then Max Hanratty. David Grant in third in the number 40 car, then the 3 of Palmer. Jonathan George in the 47 Motorsport. Remember, Joel Janko won the Michelin Encore Challenge with the help of Tristan Nunez. That was an unofficial round of the championship at the end of the 2019 season, so they're coming off of a great run. It'll be interesting to see what Jonathan can do, how far he can move forward. And when you think about that 47 car, that's one of the cars that has 3 drivers in it. So Jonathan George will hand over on their stop to Kyle Kirkwood, one of the Team USA scholarship winning drivers, and a driver extremely talented in open wheel cars, somebody who has certainly higher aspirations in open wheel cars, but he's got a pretty good batting average in sports cars. He ran the Michelin Encore Challenge in 2018. 1 sports car race, 1 victory. So that really not a bad average.
Yeah,
I'd like to be batting 1,000, right?
Yeah, me too.
So Grist out in front right now. Then Hanratty. It'll be interesting to see what Hanratty can do, because obviously Cameron Castle's a very good car underneath him, was putting down some really good laps in the ladder going. Hanratty, 5 of 6 races with Performance Tech last year, best of 4th at Sebring on debut, 3rd in IMSA Prototype Challenge competition with Extreme Speed back in 2018. So a young driver, 26 years old, who has experience in this type. That's, I think, probably extremely critical in situations like this. You might have good rain experience in a GT car or even a Formula car, but when you come here, if you're comfortable in the car that you're in because you've got time in it, does that kind of help eliminate some of the other challenges that you face?
Definitely. I mean, you have to be comfortable in the car that you're in. You have to have a good setup to go fast. But definitely the more time in the car you have, the more comfortable you'll be. And it seems like, definitely seems like Garrett Grist has got a good lead over second place. He's definitely put down some fast lap times compared to Max Hanratty. So we'll see how that unfolds.
Yeah, so Garrett Grist leads the race another 1 minute 57.5. Good consistency from Garrett. His last 3 laps have been within 3 or 4 tenths of a second, which on this sort of treacherous track is good going. He leads now by 23 seconds over Max Hanratty, who's still trying to get himself fully up to speed in that number 75 car. 2 minutes 2 last time round for Max. Cameron Castles, of course, was doing a super job as he was well in the groove, knew exactly how the track had evolved since the start of the race. But for Max, hopping in these conditions, that's a pretty tough ask. So it's David Grant then in second place, who's closing quickly on Cameron Castles. And then a gap back of about 24 seconds to Jonathan George in car number 47. He'll be driving that car, as Brian Till was saying a few moments ago, with Joel Janko, who started, and with Kyle Kirkwood, who will do the finishing stint. So that car is still very much in contention. It might be 50 seconds off the lead at the moment, but still is certainly going to be in contention. Behind them, number 3 car, Greg Palmer, continues to run long. Is he going to try and make it on 1 pit stop at number 3 car?
Well, I mean, you talk about pit stops. I think the key to the victory of this race may be for the 75, which, according to the math that we've seen, they can do it on 1 more stop. Garrett Grist was in that car considerably earlier, so you'd think they're going to have to make 2, and that could very well be the difference in who wins this race. The question is, looking an hour and 38 minutes down the road, is that ability of Cameron Castles to save fuel, is that going to be the key to bring them the victory, his first in the Prototype Challenge category?
Yeah, so we've still got a long way to go to find that out. Find out the answers to a lot of questions that are being asked right now. There's a good crowd on hand here this weekend. That's always really good to see. A lot of campers here from the Scouts of America, and they have been prowling the paddock with intensity over the last couple of days. It's been really cool to see. Part, of course, of the traditional roar before the 24, the test for the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship prior to the Rolex 24 that take place here in 3 weeks' time. So it's a big weekend of action here at Daytona International Speedway. And here in the IMSA Prototype Challenge at Daytona, we're still 7 minutes away from the halfway stage, and Garrett Grist leads this race in that car number 17 for Nielsen Racing. Nielsen Racing, European team making its North American debut this weekend, and what a debut it has been so far.
Garrett Grist out in front in the number 17, taking that over from Rob Huddist.
Did he have a problem on that last lap? It was a 2 minute. All of a sudden, it was a 2 minutes .3. He'd been doing 57s consistently. Whether he ran across some slower cars or whether he had a quick spin, I don't know.
I'm not sure. And then there's the question of did they suddenly change strategy? But I think it's too late to try to change strategy. It's too late to say, hey, we need to save fuel so we can try to make it on one stop.
No, there's no way.
He's out of the barn on that one.
No, absolutely. He was in. That was one of the first cars to make a pit stop after 16 laps. So he's already been out there for quite a long time. And he's been out there now for probably 45 minutes ready. He'll be getting ready for his next pit stop, in fact.
Garrett Grist still chewing his way through traffic. That's all well and good. But I think for Max Hanratty, he's gotten a radio call from his team. He's doing good laps, but he's gotten a radio call from his team saying, do what you're doing, run your pace, we've got this. Keep running your pace, we've got this. They'll put Cameron Castles back in at the end, I would think. Cameron's turning great laps at the beginning, so probably give him the opportunity to take it to the checkers. But Garrett Grist either needs to go and go really, really, really fast so that they can get that other pit stop done that we think they're going to have to make, or I don't think he could slow down enough to save enough fuel to do it with one more stop the way that the 75 looks like they may.
No, I completely agree with you there.
You either got to turn him loose and take any restrictions off of him that you had and just let him go like Sting.
Yeah, but I don't think that last lap was a case of trying to save fuel. Either he had a problem or somebody spun in front of him, whatever it was. I didn't see it on the on our monitor out on the racetrack, but it was certainly an uncharacteristic slow lap from Garrett Grist. Max Hanratty, meanwhile, it was a 2 minutes 0.6 last time around for Max. That was a couple of seconds quicker than his previous lap, so he is now properly in the groove as Max Hanratty, and he's able to hold off David Grant in third position.
Well, Grant with a good run, but remember, out of the drivers that are in cars right now, it was in the 40 car David Grant that started, so he's been out on the racetrack longer than anyone else. If anybody knows how this racetrack has changed and the nuances of it over the last hour and a half, it's David Grant, because he's been in the car since the drop of the green. So as far as knowledge goes and comfort with the racetrack, right now he's comfortable because he's been in the car longer than anyone else. And perhaps that's why he's been able to keep close to Max Hanratty right there on the rear wing, basically less than a second behind the 75. We saw such a great run from Cameron Castles earlier in the 75. And right now, Hanratty unable to pull away from the 40, and I think perhaps David Grant just getting more and more comfortable as time ticks away, but eventually he's going to have to pit for another stop. You can see right now just how close Grant is.
Yeah, but Max Hanratty has really stepped up these last couple laps. This lap was a 59.9 for Max Hanratty. That's only within half a second of the best lap that was turned by Cameron Castles a little while ago. So Max is now fully in the groove. He's from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and he's charging hard. He's stabilized that gap back to David Grant at about a second. It's a little bit less than it there, but Max is certainly into the groove now. The track is drying out, continues to dry out. The pace will be increasing, and that last lap for our race leader Garrett Grist back in the 58s again, so 2 minutes better, 2 seconds better than his previous lap.
How do you work the strategy now if you're the 47 team? Jonathan George, you're 16 seconds back of third place, but you know you've got, in Jonathan, a good race car driver. You know, as far as Kyle Kirkwood goes, you've got a really good race car driver to put in there. Kirkwood sliding in that seat, practicing. It's like he had never been out of a prototype car and using that Formula car experience to his advantage. Dakota Dickerson is right there. I would expect that he would take the 54 to the checkered flag. So as the racetrack changes, you've got some really good drivers that are going to be in these cars, but I think that the driver may not win this race. I know that that's hard for you, Austin, would not give the credit to a driver. I think it may be engineering that does it. I know that you'll say it was actually Cameron Castles who saved the fuel that allowed the strategy to work, but rightly so. When you're sitting in the cockpit, you got to do the job that the engineer is asking you to do. But it may be that strategy.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's an endurance race, and strategy comes into play immensely, and that's like we were saying about the lower fuel loads. I think that's going to be a big thing about the strategy and a big thing for the rest of the season. That the strategy is going to come a lot more into play than it did last year.
And all because when we talk about fuel, once again, if you're just joining us, the fuel considerably different, the fuel load considerably different. 15% less fuel on board from 100-liter fuel capacity to 85 liters. So a 15-liter reduction, and that changes the length of a stint, which of course then begins to affect the number of pit stops that you're going to do in a race unless you can use some strategy to your advantage, and a little bit of Mother Nature too. A lot of Mother Nature, actually, because that very damp racetrack in the beginning limited the amount of horsepower. Horsepower takes fuel. You got to feed the ponies. And if you're not feeding them, you can save that fuel. And that seems what the 75 was able to do. For Garrett Grist out in front at the 17 from Nielsen Racing right now. Good to see that team here in Prototype Challenge competition. But they're either going to have to lay down some laps or perhaps just hope for a full course caution and get some fuel mileage that way. Max Hanratty there in the 75 has a good Ligier underneath him. That blue and yellow flashing through the bus stop right now. Cameron Castle's a great job, but in very different conditions in that first hour or so of this event. And then David Grant consistent in the 40. A little mistake here or there in the beginning in very difficult conditions. But has been consistent since then and has been consistently close to the 75 of Max Hanratty. I think he's dropped back just a little bit. Then Jonathan George in the 47, Dakota Dickerson in the 54. That is the top five, but still an hour and a half to go as we reach the halfway mark here in round one of the 2020 season of IMSA Prototype Challenge. Garrett Grist doing everything he can. I think they probably turned him loose out in front. Their strategy not really working the way they wanted to. The 75 of Max Hanratty seems to have the strategic advantage as far as fuel goes. We'll have to wait and see how that plays out. David Grant out in front right now. So the 17 out in front. That's a Norma chassis. Then the 75. That's a Ligier chassis, and then David Grant in another Norma. We saw the battle between the Norma and the Ligier last year. Lucky to have with us, fortunate to have Austin McCusker, defending champion in the category. You know, your plans are not to be here this year, but I said earlier, it's not that you're not driving. Tell the fans at home and out in the infield today what it is that you're going to be doing in 2020.
Yeah, so we're still gonna be in an LMP3 prototype, but we're gonna be switching over to the European Le Mans Series, 6 rounds all throughout Europe. It's gonna be a split class racing, so there's gonna be LMP2 and GTEs on the track with us. So it'll be a wake up call. It'll be more like the WeatherTech Series, but more of the European way. It's the European series of what WeatherTech is, but they include P3s in that. But that's what we're going to be doing. And we're running with the German team in their Europol competition. So we're excited to get 2020 ongoing.
How's your German?
Not anything. Nothing. Yeah.
9. Yeah. But a very different deal. You're going to be driving an LMP3 based machine, as we see Anthony Simone in the 23 on pit road, just inside the top 10, but a lap down. It's an LMP3 machine, but as you said, now it's combined with everything else. So you're not alone in your class on the racetrack. You've got other cars around you. How big of a change is that going to be for you? The car you're driving is comfortable, but your surroundings will be different, in addition to the fact that it's racetracks that I assume you've not been on.
Yeah, I haven't been to any of the circuits yet, so that's going to be a big wake-up call. And then you're going to have LMP2 cars coming at you, 10 to 15 seconds a lap faster than you. So you're just going to have to keep your eyes up and make sure you make no mistakes and just be, so aware of your surroundings even more than you were in this category, the IMSA Prototype Challenge.
Well, good luck, and that obviously that is a huge opportunity for you. When I think a lot of other people your age are, how old are you?
21.
Yeah, they're in college and going to school, and you're going to school. It's just a different kind of class.
Yeah, definitely a different kind of class. It's a racing class.
Yeah, there'll be
it's very enjoyable.
Big learning curve, and an enjoyable one. Not so enjoyable for the 61 right now. Danny Koch with a problem.
Yeah, that's a shame. He's been doing a nice job there through this stint. He's taken over from George Dacos, who started the car, and he was running quite nicely. He was up inside the top 10 for a portion of time. But looks like he's slipped back again now. He's just actually been in the pits to make his second stop of the day. Number 3 car also came straight back in again after just a couple of laps, so that must be a problem for the Junior 3 Motorsport entry, car number 3. Meantime, we're past the halfway point in this race, and Garrett Grist has extended his lead now out to about a half a minute over Max Hanratty. But Max, at the wheel of that number 75 car, he is improving his pace with every lap. Last time round was a 58.7. That was his best lap of the race. And he's able to pull away now from the number 40 of David Grant in 3rd position. The sister 47 Motorsports entry of Jonathan George in car number 47 is in 4th, and he is closing quite rapidly on David Grant. He's now just 2.3 seconds between that 3rd and 4th place car, and right behind them only a few seconds is Dakota Dickerson, who a few laps ago turned the fastest lap of the race at a 56.7. This time around, though, it's Jonathan George who sets the new fastest lap of the race of 56.510 for the Florida-based Brazilian.
Racetrack really beginning to dry out a little bit, and you wonder if that's playing into the hands of some of these teams. You talked about the lap times that Jonathan George and Dakota Dickerson are laying down, but the gap that Max Hanratty is beginning to gain between himself and David Grant, and Grant falling back into the clutches of Jonathan George. Perhaps that 40 car set up a little bit more for consistent rain throughout the day, and as the track dries, it begins to change. And when we talk about setting cars up for the wet or the dry, if you've got one set up for the wet, if it starts to dry, especially with high-speed corners like some of these, not the most fun thing in the world to drive, is it?
Definitely not. You're going to struggle a little bit when it starts to dry out, which I think it's beginning to do. You start to see a little bit of a dry line on the Speedway portion of the track, and there's really no spray coming off the LMP3 prototypes at the moment. So we'll see who's set up for dry and see who's set up for rain real soon, I'm pretty sure.
What's the biggest change that you can make? Oh, and down on the bow, and that is not what you want to see.
Teammates.
Oh,
goodness gracious me. Running in the 3rd and 4th position, number 40 car and the number 47. Well, that's not good news. Jonathan George, he just set in the 47 car, had just set the fastest lap of the race. David Grant, he just turned his best lap of the race in number 40 at 1 minute 59, but they managed to come together on the back straight, and unless we can get that car going again pretty quickly, that is going to be a full course caution.
That was a pretty good thump, and it's one of those deals where it looked to me, and we'll have to see if we can get a replay of it, that Jonathan George looked to the inside, got down, you and I talked about this, Austin, off the dry line and gets onto the paint. See the painted stripe, driver's left? And with those left side tires on the paint incredibly slick. Cannot say enough about how slick the paint is. If you think about it, like sandpaper, the asphalt has a good texture to it, but when you paint it, it fills in those bumps, that sandpaper-like material, that graining, and it just becomes slick like linoleum in your kitchen if you spill water on it, or terrazzo tile. And it looks like that's what happened to Jonathan George. Perhaps he got in there. Grant moved a little bit in the 40, and George kind of feinted left to make sure that he gave his teammate plenty of room. But when he did, got on that paint with the left side, and on the brakes, the car just got away from him and then made that impact with his teammate. And it was a significant cloud. I thought for a moment that the right front suspension on the 47 was damaged, but it must have been just the bodywork that I saw up in the air.
I mean, if there isn't damage, then the 47 car would be a miracle, because it was a pretty hard hit. And really unfortunate. I mean, David Grant did absolutely nothing wrong there. He was pushing as hard as he could, just set his best lap of the race, but it was he that came off worse in that incident between the two teammates.
That is not the conversation that you want to be having post-race. And as we watch right now, the 47 through the bus stop, I can't believe it, actually. The car looks like it's tracking true. It's straight. The bodywork staying down even after we saw it way up in the air, and certainly aerodynamic forces are going to help it stay down, but it shows just how stout these cars are. But for David Grant, he's on pit road. Bodywork looks intact on that car too, but a significant hit on the left rear. I'm not sure that straight and true is something that we can say about the 40. The team checking it over right now. Obviously some damage on the right front bodywork. Don't know if there's right front suspension damage as well. You spent plenty of time in these cars, and I'm going to assume that perhaps may have made contact with something along the way. Are they pretty stout?
They're pretty stout, but I think that was a very hard hit between the two teammates, and you could see on the prior to this picture here that the bodywork was up in the air, and no, I didn't think that they were both going to make it out of it, but
and neither.
Looks like the 40 car is going to need a nose.
Yeah, at best. It's a shame they were really doing a nice job in the third position. Garrett Grested is still leading. We've got a new fastest lap, by the way, on this lap. Car number 23, it's still Anthony Simoni in car number 23. It's just a new fastest lap of the race. He's in the 12th position, but he's not given up yet. 5.679 then the new standard in this race. The race leader last time around.
So this is the replay again. There's that solid hit. It's actually the 40 engine of the 47.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, it was the other way around.
Yeah. So Jonathan George had made the pass then around the banking, and it was David Brown who was trying to get that position back, moved to the inside there, and I think he had plenty of room, didn't he, there to make that. But
so that's why we see the damage on the right front. We got the numbers backwards once they spun around and went through. We thought it was the opposite way, but obviously it was the 40 that got down on the paint. It doesn't really matter who did what other than what caused damage, but you can tell once again there's danger everywhere around this racetrack. You get that dry line. Austin, you and I talked about that. The dry line is good, but you get off of it, it becomes tricky. You get to that paint like we were talking about just a moment ago, and it becomes a huge, huge challenge. The challenge for Garrett Grist right now may be going fast enough to get far enough in front of the 75 that you just saw go by Max Handretti, because they seem to have the good strategy right now. Dakota Dickerson in the 54, putting down some impressive laps. He's gotten past Jonathan George after he and David Grant had their little contact and their disagreement at the bus stop. So Dakota Dickerson now is moving forward, and you got to wonder, will they be able to do this with one more stop? I don't think so, based upon the pit lane times that we saw and when they stopped. It looks to me like in the catbird seat right now is the 75, but still a long way to go from Daytona, with an hour and 19 minutes left to go in round one of the IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship for 2020. Not just about speed, but about strategy as well in any form of racing. But speed, skill, experience, they all come into play, and strategy may be the big deal today, because this weather has really mixed things up, and the ability of Cameron Castles in the 75 to extend that mileage in the first stint is what is so impressive. That is what ultimately may give Cameron Castles and Max Handretti a victory here at Daytona in round one. We'll have to wait and see.
Meanwhile, Garrett Grist, he's now turning nice consistent laps at the front of the field, 157.7. That's about his average over the last half a dozen laps, and he's extended the lead now over Max Handretti to 36 seconds. Jonathan George, however, despite that incident, is clawing back the gap that had resulted from his incident along with number 40 car, his teammate. He's closed the gap from 13 seconds just 4 laps ago. He's more than halved it. 6.2 seconds between Max Handretti in second position and Jonathan George in third, but only 4 seconds behind him is Dakota Dickerson in that number 54 MLT Motorsports car. He's taken over from Dean Baker, and he's charging along in the 4th position, the last year's US F3 champion, and is used the scholarship money that he gained there to move into the prototype ranks. He raced with this MLT team last season. He was teamed with Dylan Murray last year. Didn't do all of the races, but did most of them, and he very much impressed Dr. Mike and the rest of the MLT Motorsports team. And Dakota is on board for the full campaign this year. He's starting off well now with an hour and 16 minutes remaining in the 4th position. That's car number 54.
Prototype Challenge action continues from Daytona International Speedway. Garrett Grist out in front in the number 17, where he has taken over from Rob Hodis in the beginning and really charged to the front. Has been laying down some spectacular lap times. I would imagine Michelin rain tires on that Ligier chassis based upon the conditions that existed at the time that Garrett Grist got in. But knowing what the team now knows about the strategy that's been played by the 75, you're looking at the racetrack, Austin McCusker. At what point in time does the 17 team say, let's put slicks on this thing and see what we can do? You're looking at the racetrack. What would your call be?
I don't know if I was the driver of the 17, I don't know if I'd be the first taker to drives, but I'd try and wait it out as long as I could, see what other drivers would do, see when they take dry tires, and see what the lap time difference is. That's the biggest thing. It's kind of hard to be the first person on reins, especially if you lead the race. Gotta take the power.
You're young and brave. It's easy for us to say. And that's why I ask. I mean, you've got the experience, so you're the guy that knows. And very valid point. Maybe if my car is still good, maybe the risk-reward isn't worth it. Maybe the time that I'll gain isn't worth it. Austin McCusker, defending champion in the Prototype Challenge category, so I'm going to take his advice, and we're not going to change tires just yet. Brian Till, Jeremy Shaw with you as well, with an hour and 15 minutes left to go from here in round one, and Mother Nature really mixed things up with that deluge. About 30 minutes before the drop of the green, or the scheduled drop of the green, the race started behind the safety car because of the weather conditions, and then the green flag came out after the second time behind the safety car, a single file start. And from that point in time on, it was about finding speed but saving fuel, and a penalty for the number 40, David Grant. Incident responsibility with the 47. And so he's going to have to visit pit lane, and that's going to add a little salt to the wound from the jump start that David Grant had when we went to green the first time.
Yeah, he'd already fallen, though, several laps off the ultimate pace as a result of that pit stop.
Looks like the 17 is in.
Yeah.
Hour and 15 minutes to go. I'm trying to look. My eyes aren't that good. They're older than yours, and you're wearing glasses, Austin. What's that tire that's sitting there at the right rear of the 17? It had a sticker on it.
Yeah, I'm seeing the sticker on it, so I'm thinking it's going to be dry.
But it's going up on the wall.
Yep, it's going back on the wall.
Yeah, in the meantime, 75 car with Jonathan George right behind. Looked like Jonathan got really sideways out of the corner. Did he stay on the road?
I don't know if he did, but looking at the 17 sitting there, he's down, and this is a deal where they're waiting on the pit stop time. Tires on the wall were slicks, and they had stickers. Did they leave him on the hot Michelin reins? Did they put new Michelin reins? I don't think they would have put new ones on. So I think they left him on the ones that he was on.
I think so. It's ready.
With an hour and 13 minutes to go, they're going to have to make another stop. So the question is, stay on the reins until that last stop, and then we'll put you on the slicks.
This now is the battle for the lead. It's Max Hanratty who's back in the lead in the number 75 car. It was Cameron Castles who was leading before the pit stops. So Max, this is the first time Max himself has actually led this race. But look there, right behind him is Jonathan George in car number 47. And he has been the quickest car on the track much of the last few laps. And he's looking to make a move once again here. It'll be Max Hanratty who is his next victim, or that's who he hopes at least, as they head into the bus stop.
Things heating up with just over an hour to go from Daytona International Speedway, with Jonathan George in the 47, putting pressure on Max Hanratty, the leader. We've had strategy, we've had Mother Nature, we've had speed, we've had problem spins, we've had just about everything you can expect in motorsports in this first hour and 45 minutes. And we still have an hour and 12 to go. And Max Hanratty, a mirror full of Jonathan George, but just behind them, 5 seconds back the last time by the line. We'll have to see where Dakota Dickerson is this time. Takes 0.2 of a second off of that. Dakota Dickerson beginning to move his way forward. So things closing down at the front. And Garrett Grist, even after that pit stop, still being shown in the top 5. A full course caution could completely change the complexion of this race. So it's far from over at this point in time. And when you think about it, you're thinking that Max Hanratty and the 75 could do just one more stop. We're thinking that Garrett Grist is going to need another, and Jonathan George and Dakota Dickerson are probably going to need 2 more stops. So,
well, I'm not sure about number 54 car. That we will see on that one. But this is certainly fascinating how this race is unfolding. And the Max Hanratty, who's leading this race in that number 75, a big slide there on the entrance to turn 6, but he just turned his best lap of the race as Max Hanratty, 1 minute 57.111, and he's holding off Jonathan George.
Great to have Austin McCusker here to quiz. I just keep asking questions because there's so many that pop into my mind when I watch this. We're watching these cars slide around right now, and I'm thinking the Michelin rain tire is tired. It's beginning to wear out. When a rain tire begins to go, is it predictable? Does it happen suddenly? Is it controllable? What are these drivers having to deal with right now?
Yeah, I mean,
so close.
Yeah, I mean, it's predictable. You can feel it degrading, definitely, but you just really, the amount of grip in the car just keeps diminishing because the tire's really overheating.
Does the balance stay the same?
No, it does not. So you start to almost four-wheel slide and lose almost that side bite in the car. And then the rear end you start to lose as well. So then we got the 47 going into the pit lane, it seems like.
So the 47 in with an hour and 10 minutes to go. Unless they can run a pretty miserly run, they'll have to make another stop. So that answers that question for us. I think you're going to have to get inside an hour before you think that these guys can make it with just one more stop.
So that's certainly good news there for Max Hanratty. 158.8 last time around. However, instead of Jonathan George filling his mirrors, it's going to be Dakota Dickerson any moment now, because Dakota Dickerson, in car number 54, he's just turned his best lap of the race, a 1 minute 55.5 in car number 54.
And as the 47 stops, you'll see Jonathan George climb out, and climbing in the 47, Kyle Kirkwood, 2018 F3 America's champion, Formula 4 2000 champion, Indy Pro 2000 champion in 2019. And as I said, somebody has a 1,000 batting average in sports car racing. He's only run one, and that was the 2018 Michelin Sports Car Encore at Sebring. But he did it in a Prototype 3 category car, and he shared victory that round. So very comfortable in his car, very quick. He's going to get back into the fight, and expect him to be a player in all of this by the time it's over with as well. Right now, Dakota Dickerson, that car seems to come alive. And for Max Hanratty, he's got to be thinking, what do I have to do? I just got rid of one, and now I got another one that's closing in on me. Still a long way to go. Still more than an hour. We haven't gotten inside an hour to go yet. And this could easily come down to the final laps. Dakota Dickerson, F4 champion, F3 champion, working his way up, literally working his way up, because with each one of those championships came a scholarship. He used the F4 scholarship to pay for his F3 ride. He used his F3 championship to bring to this program so that he can compete here in sports cars. He's a young driver who's probably looked at it and said, I don't think my opportunity in IndyCar exists anymore, so I'll turn my attention to sports car racing. And he turned his scholarship towards sports car racing. 23 years old, and amazing to say that he might look at it and say, my IndyCar career is probably done, but I'll look at sports car racing. But a very intelligent thing to do. He's making the best of it right now, because there's no longer a second between Max Hanratty and Dakota Dickerson. There's not even an LMP3 chassis between the two, I don't think.
Barely, is that right? And Max Hanratty, boy, is he stepping up here. A new best lap for Max last time around, 156.55 was Tristan Vidas.
What a move!
What a lunge that was down the inside for Dakota Dickerson. Wow.
Decisive, powerful, not a hesitation at all by Dakota Dickerson. That is a champion move right there. It was strong, like I said, it was decisive. Looked at the opening, said it was there, and said, without question, I'm going. Placed the 54 there. Strong move off the corner, and Dakota Dickerson is gone.
Yeah, oh, that was a great move by Dakota. He's a long way back there going into the West Horseshoe, but boy, he sees there that I think Max Hanratty just slipped a little bit wide, didn't he? He just set his best lap of the race, but he certainly, I think, outbraked himself just a little bit there on that lap, and that Dickerson saw the opportunity and went for it.
That was a power move.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like Hanratty was driving with his mirrors a little bit. It seems like he outbroke himself, or he just kind of pretty much just let Dakota through. You know, it seemed like a really late move on Dakota's half.
Well, I mean,
yeah, but I don't you think he left it? He went a little bit deep and left the door open a little bit.
Well, so let me ask you this: if you're Max Hanratty, is the crew in your ear saying, "Don't worry about this. Don't worry about this. Don't worry about this"? They know that the 54 is going to have to make probably 2 more stops, and they've got 1. But Jeremy, you're saying you're not sure the 54 does.
We've seen that number 17 car has just been into the pits again on this lap. Number 64 and number 17 both came in and made pit stops on this lap. So
they
were just a quick
go
stop.
An hour and 6 minutes.
That's going to be a tall ask there. I think they're going to need some caution to be able to do that. But I don't know what the forecast is, because there was another kind of band of rain behind that may or may not move in. That's kind of behind us.
Wouldn't have needed to stop if he was just in a few minutes
Correct.
ago. So they must feel that they can get to the infield.
I think that, or I think he's probably gone to, I'm sure now he'll have gone to slick tyres.
Yeah.
We'll look at what I was going to say as Dakota Dickerson made that move, is that we've just had a new fastest lap of the race by Tristan Vidas, the young Estonian in car number 60 for Volvo Racing. He had just made a pit stop 3 or 4 laps ago. He'd taken over from Bruce Hamilton. And Tristan drove the middle stint in the race, but I think he's just come in on lap 45. We now completed lap 50, and he's just turned that fastest lap in the race. I'm pretty sure he will be on slick tyres. The number 17 team will have seen that and responded by putting slicks on.
That's exactly what you said earlier, Austin. I don't want to be the first person, but the first person that does that you see that it works.
Yeah, then you respond. That's when you want to do it. You know, you'll see that the lap times will drop a little bit. And I think the 17 was actually in the pit for a penalty. I saw that it said it was fast.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, it said it was fast in the pit lane in 1.2 seconds. So that's what I saw.
So if you don't serve that,
well, in that case, they wouldn't be able to change tyres on making a penalty. I didn't spot that. Thank you.
You have to come in if you're short of the 115 seconds. You have to come back in and sit for the period of time that you were short. And that sounds all well and good if you're a couple of seconds short. Well, I only have to sit for 2 seconds. Yeah, that's fine. But it's a 40-second delta or so up and down the pit lane, 45 seconds just to drive through the pits. So you got to figure that's really a 50-second penalty. It's not a 2-second penalty.
Definitely a big penalty for the 17.
Ouch.
At least on the podium in this race.
All right, so there we changed the complexion of the race one more time. Now we'll throw penalties into the mix.
And I think, where is he on the racetrack? I think he's behind the race leader now, isn't he, Garrett Grist?
Where is he? A lap down.
Yeah. So he's still in 4th position, but he is a lap down now to the race leaders. Dakota Dickerson, he turned his best lap of the race last time around at 55.0, but now in 6th position, car number 60 is Tristan Vidas, 151.832, another fastest lap, and clearly he is most definitely on those slick tyres in the Volvo Racing car number 60.
Still a long way to go, an hour and 3 minutes, and I find it interesting. Oh, that was so close. Max Hanratty, once again, you were talking about outbraking yourself a little bit earlier when we saw Dakota Dickerson get by. That time, I think made the proper decision as he got into 6. It looked like he couldn't slow the car down, so maybe he kept his hands straight a little bit, Austin, but I think the tire wall got real big, real quick.
Yeah, it came up real fast. I mean, he probably had to straighten his hands out, break the straight line as much as possible, but he came close to that tire wall. That could have been a big wreck.
Dodged a bullet there, did Max Hanratty. Stays in the fight in 2nd place. 2.8 seconds the last time by at the line was the difference between he and Dakota Dickerson. Expect that margin to extend after that near miss for Max Hanratty in turn 6. Still a long way to go. As I said, an hour and 2 minutes from Daytona International Speedway, round 1 of the 2020 IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship. And there are pitfalls around every corner. This race far from over. Do not miss a lap. Impressive run by Dakota Dickerson here at Daytona International Speedway. The young open wheel standout, moving to sports cars full-time in 2020. In the IMSA Prototype Challenge category, has taken the 54 Ligier to the front of the field in some difficult conditions right now. Max Hanratty running in 2nd place, but strategy may be the deciding factor in this victory. Dean Baker, a good run in the 54 in the opening stints in some of the difficult conditions. As a problem is that the 46 or the 40th, it's the 46, 47. Bright orange car, but problems there off the racing surface and out of the way. So that should not bring out a full course caution. But as we were saying of Dakota Dickerson, a great run for him. But it may be strategy and the ability to save fuel that brings a victory to the 75. Still an hour and 1 minute to go before that plays out. But that's the card that seems to have been played by that team right now. Dickerson in front, then Max Hanratty, then the 6 of Blake Mount, 17 of Garrett Grist. Grist a lap down, but good fights all around this racetrack and some different strategy being played. Some teams with a 3-driver format, others with 2, the vast majority with 2-driver formats. That's what we have in the lead right now. I think it's one of those things that the 3-driver format in this 3-hour race with the new fuel windows the way they are and the minimum drive time makes it kind of challenging at times, certainly under green flag conditions, to make sure your driver's getting the lap times that they need. Vitas there in the 60 car that you think is probably on slick tires, and then Kyle Kirkwood just behind. Kirkwood in the 47. On that stop, when they hand it over to Kyle Kirkwood, and full course caution.
Ooh, that's, I'll tell you who that is good news for. It's the number 6. Well, it should be of Blake Mount, because he was actually in the pit lane as the full course caution came out. However, by pulling into the pit lane, he has fallen off the lead lap. So in fact, I think it's a really unlucky break for the number 6 car.
Well, I'm looking for the problem that brings out the full course caution. I don't know if it's the stranded car that we saw a little bit earlier. Anyway, you look at it, it bunches up the field. But for Dakota Dickerson, this could be a defining moment, depending how long it takes to clean this up. Can he save enough fuel?
No, he'll come in now to make a pit stop for sure. I think we'll see wholesale pit stops under this full course caution. There's number 33 car, by the way.
And then the complexion of the race changes once again. The strategy advantage that the 75 had then goes out the window. They worked hard for that advantage, and it may now go away. And now it's going to come down to mano a mano and a hard-fought sprint to the end.
Yeah, definitely a hard-fought sprint. I mean, it's definitely beneficial for Garrett Grist coming in now. So you know, he was on that cusp of having to do another stop. So this might put that over the edge.
Wow, look at him right there. You see the standing water to the right side of the racetrack into the braking zone in turn 6. You don't want to hit that on slicks. So going to slicks, I mean, it seems to be the thing to do. Yes, Austin, but I mean, there's still a lot of there's danger all around here if you do that.
No, it's got to be slicks.
Yeah, I'm looking at the lap times now, and it seems to be about 4 seconds quicker on slicks.
Yeah,
so you got to do it
at least,
without a doubt. Yes.
Yep.
On a problem for the 6.
Oh, goodness.
Dan Goldberg being shown behind the wheel.
That car has just made a pit stop. It was running in the 3rd position.
Does it have all 4 wheels on it? Now, obviously, you can't see the right side of it when you see it now he's spun, because I just saw a car go by. I couldn't tell where he was until I saw the traffic go by. So he is spun, and there you go. Coming back out on the racetrack, if he's on slicks, he can't get any bite right now on the grass. You talked about that earlier, Austin. Hard to get the car back on the racetrack if you've had a problem, and hard to get those slicks up to temperature if you head back out. Now, let's go back and talk about the difference between Norma chassis and Ligier chassis and how quickly they come up to speed. And cloud cover, temperatures falling throughout the day, relatively cool racetrack. I would say advantage, at least for the first couple of laps, to a Ligier.
Yeah, definitely, I agree with you. It's the Ligier seems to bring the tire temp up pretty quickly compared to the Norma, where it takes at least 2 to 3 laps. But like we saw last year at Mid-Ohio, the Ligier outperformed the Norma because of the cold temperatures and tire temps. So it was able to drive into the Michelin tires in a short period of time.
So it'll be interesting to see, as you guys said, so it'll be inside 57 minutes easily before the pit lane would open, and they have an opportunity to do pit stops. Dickerson, Hanratty, both in Ligier chassis. Garrett Grist in the first of the Norma chassis. And then the 60 of Vitas behind him, another one of the Ligier chassis. Then Kyle Kirkwood in the 47. That's a Norma chassis as well, I believe. No, that's a Ligier.
Yeah, this is wholesale pit stops we will see now.
Here we go. So pit lane is open.
Yeah, and this will give some drive. We only had 3 cars lead lap in. The big winner from this full course caution, no question about it, is kind of a 17 who actually was back on the lead lap. He was there's 3 cars on lead lap right now, number 74, 54, 75 and 17. The number 75 car, did that not make a pit stop?
I don't see him on pit road.
No,
the question is, how close do you play these pit stops, Austin? I mean, there's this minimum time. How close do you try to get it to 115 seconds? You know, there are guys that'll do 118 seconds because they don't want to run afoul of it, because running afoul of it is a pretty significant penalty. You got to come back in and you've got to sit for that difference. That's a huge penalty. We talked about that. But if you give yourself too big a margin, you stand a chance of losing positions on pit road.
Definitely. I mean, I think the sweet spot's going to be right at a second to a second and a half between or after the 115 seconds. So you don't want to be right at it, because you know the timer or just yourself could be have a little bit of a margin of error. But you usually leave about a second of a gap.
Rain tires off the 54. Michelin slicks going on for Dakota Dickerson. We would assume that has been the same for any tire change out on pit road. We saw Garrett Grist in the 17 back underway, and now Dakota Dickerson heads off down pit road.
I'm not quite sure why the number 75 car wouldn't have made a pit stop now, unless there's a fair bit of, they need a lot of caution to get to the end of the race without needing another stop. I can't see any way, so I don't really understand why you wouldn't make the stop under yellow and get that fuel stop done. If you come in to make a pit stop under green flag conditions, if you don't take on fuel, then you can just do whatever you need to do and get back out again. You don't have to spend the otherwise minimum of 115 seconds. But if you do fuel, it is a minimum of 115. And I can think of no reason why you wouldn't want to make that minute and 15 stop under yellow. Last year, of course, you couldn't pit under yellow. That's one of the rule changes for this year. Now you can make your pit stops under yellow flag conditions. And that's I don't understand why the number 75 car would not have been in along with everybody else.
Perhaps miscommunication.
What it does do, however, is not allow too many cars to get back onto the lead lap by staying out there. So I can kind of see the benefit there, because only the top 3 cars, number 54, 75 and 17, were on the same lap. The number 60 car, which is a lap down, that also did not make a pit stop this time around. And again, I'm not quite sure why that would have been, other than the fact that Tristan Vidas was turning some fantastic laps in that number 60 Roller Racing Ligier.
But any strategic advantage that you had because of the strategy earlier is out the window. When that yellow came out, it completely changed everything. So it's going to be a dogfight to the end. You want to be on equal footing with everybody else. Why wouldn't you pit with everybody else?
Right, absolutely, yeah, exactly. I don't see the number 75 car wouldn't pit with only 3 cars on the lead lap. He's going to make sure he keeps his lap advantage, I guess, over most of the field. But he's certainly going to be that's going to be a big hole to dig out now versus number 17 and number 54. So maybe they just realised, okay, look, we're not going to beat those guys, but we've still got a good chance of beating everybody else if we maintain our lead lap. Is he going to come in now?
There we go. 75 is in. He leads the field. The rest of the cars that are going to make their pit stop. Max Hanratty into his pit box, looking down. Cameron Castle's not climbing back on board, so Hanratty will take this car to the checkered flag. 52 minutes, 45 seconds to go. Once again, 115 minutes, the minimum time that the car can spend on pit road. That is from the line at pit end to the line at pit out, well around the corner. So the pit stop can be somewhat leisurely. The crew can take their time and make sure that they're doing the proper job and getting everything buttoned up the way that it needs to, although it's considerably shorter than it was last year. I think last year the minimum pit stop time was 3 minutes.
3 minutes, yeah, I think so. But that time goes by pretty quickly when you're in the pit box, just because the time to go down the pit lane takes 45 seconds around. So you don't really have that much time in the box. It goes by pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's curious to think that, I mean, they played the strategy so well, and you wonder, did they have a radio issue? Was there a mistake kind of understanding the rules as to whether they could pit under yellow in the beginning? New rule changes bring their own challenges for the teams and such. Was that it? Did he just miss the radio call? You don't know. But it seems to have been a relatively costly mistake, and in fact, the 60 of Vitas gets out in front of the 75, and it's just another car you're going to have to work your way around. For Garrett Grist,
I think he's on wet weather tires too. I don't think he's on. Is Grist on slicks or not?
I believe that he is.
Well, we thought he had, but you said...
But that's right.
The
last time he was on pit road.
It was a penalty stop, so you're certainly not allowed to pit. And if you're serving a penalty, you're not allowed to do anything else, that's for sure.
So
it was a relatively quick pit stop.
So effectively, the 17 needs another stop.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Because the last stop didn't, quote, count.
Yeah.
It was a penalty.
Yeah.
Interesting. So is the 17, while the 17 is obviously on the racetrack, is the 17 in contention? Is he a competitor? If you're sitting there as Dakota Dickerson, are you asking your crew right now exactly what's going on and whether that car really actually exists or doesn't exist?
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a toss-up. You don't want to make a stupid mistake if the guy's not in contention for the actual win of the race. But in my opinion, I think that he's not really a threat at the moment, so I would take my time and not risk it.
It's kind of an unknown. So with 50 minutes, inside 50 minutes to go, you got a little time to ascertain exactly what the situation is. Put your crew to work. Have them crunch the numbers, because these crews keep track of everyone up and down pit lane. And then they'll give Dakota Dickerson the order of, yeah, you got to get by him, or no, he's not, he doesn't matter, we think he's going to have to stop. So kind of one of those things we'll have to wait and see with just over 49 minutes to go here from Daytona International Speedway. Lights out on the BMW safety car as it accelerates away, leaving Garrett Grist at the head of the field here in IMSA Prototype Challenge competition. It has been a wild one so far, and coming down to 49 minutes to go and a green expected this time by. Expect more action on the racetrack, because there are a lot of questions left to be unanswered. The main one right now is, does Garrett Grist need another pit stop? Because the last one he made was serving a penalty. Can he make it to the end as the green flag flies? Racing resumes at Daytona, and looking around the high side right now, look like the 47 of Kirkwood trying to get around the high side as they head down into turn one, side by side through 1 and 2. Got to be a little slick offline, and almost every one of these machines right now on the slick Michelin tire, and what a move as Garrett Grist gets shuffled back.
Yeah, and slick tires, I'm pretty sure they're on Kyle Kirkwood's car most likely. And Kyle there, he's a lap down in the 4th position right now in car number 47, but he's now, well, he was a lap down. He's now got to make up all that ground, but that was a great move around the outside.
But that's the move for the lead right there as Dakota Dickerson gets by Garrett Grist. And I don't know if Grist got handcuffed a little bit by the move of Kyle Kirkwood, but now the 60 of Vita's in there as well. No, Kazemit's behind the wheel of the 60, and now he's attacking Garrett Grist, bringing with him the 64, Matt Bell, and look at that. They go around the outside. Garrett Grist, the meat in the sandwich is Matt Bell and Tonis Kazemit's, two of the toughest competitors you'll find out there on the racetrack today. Just said, see you, Garrett, we're out of here.
Yeah, it seems like not making that pit stop really hurt him, and the wet weather tires are definitely not the choice at the moment. He's fallen back quite a bit to the leader.
Yeah, it's pretty much full dry now, isn't it? The race lap record in dry conditions is a 144. Yikes, we've got nowhere near that yet. 51 is the best lap of the race so far, 51.3. But there's still some sort of slick spots out on the racetrack there, particularly in the middle of the bus stop. That's going to make things pretty tricky.
And if you're wondering why Garrett Grist didn't just dive to pit lane on the restart and get that problem taken care of, he can't. By the rule, you have to take the green flag on the racetrack and go past the stripe, complete a green flag lap before you can come in. So expect to see Garrett Grist, I would imagine, on pit lane this time by, and a problem for the 61. George Stakos with a spin. You were saying earlier that he had never raced in the rain before, so a little baptism by fire here at Daytona International Speedway. What a place to get your first rain experience. A little problem on those cold Michelin tires as he heads out on the racetrack. Kazimit's in the 64 now. Past Dickerson. This is for the lead. Kazimit takes the lead from Dickerson. A power move under braking into the International Horseshoe, and things really getting mixed up here in the final hour of competition at Daytona. A powerful move, just like Dickerson had put on one of the other competitors a little bit earlier on. I think it was Max Hanratty that he drove past. And now Kazimit does the exact same thing, or I should say the 64 does the exact same thing. Matt Bell. And Bell, timing and scoring getting mixed up right now, showing those cars now down a lap. We thought they were on the lead lap, but my timing and scoring now showing Kazimit and Bell a lap down.
Oh, yeah, no. They're definitely a lap down. What the scoring is showing, though, is number 17 car made a pit stop on lap 56, which I don't think it did. That's very strange. There's some odd things been going on with scoring today, quite frankly, but there's no doubt that just the top 3 cars are on the lead lap, well, top 4 cars now, with Carl Kirkwood having made that pass. He also is back on the lead lap. The first car 1 lap down is Matt Bell in car number 64, along with Tony's Kazim's number 60, number 11 of Stephen Thomas, who's apparently taken back the wheel of the car from Thomas Merrill, and then number 23 is Anthony Simone. He also is just 1 lap down to the race leaders.
Well, I misspoke. The timing and scoring that I was looking at on program was a little different than what the official is that you were looking at, Jeremy. I thought that battle was for the lead. It showed them all on the same lap at one point in time. But Dakota Dickerson, perhaps the columnist driver out there saying, these guys don't matter right now, let them go. I'm not going to fight that hard. They can go do all the battle that they want. What they're looking for is another full course caution to pull them around. I think right at the end of the lead lap, they were still considered kind of on the same lap, and that's why I didn't see the -1 beside their name. But right now, Dakota Dickerson out front, then Garrett Grist, then Max Hanratty, Kyle Kirkwood in the 47. But some great racing out there. And here's that move, the 64 getting past the 54. And as I said, Dakota Dickerson just saying, okay, go ahead, Matt Bell. You've got 3.5 miles to get back around behind me again. I'm not going to press too hard. But at the same point in time, for Dakota Dickerson, you don't want to sit and dawdle and just let him by, because that allows Garrett Grist to kind of close back in just a little bit. Grist being shown just 1.4 seconds behind, but a little confusing. I mean, we're still thinking that Garrett Grist needs to make another stop.
Yeah, I would certainly think so. Number 54 car, however, he'll be trying to stretch his fuel now, so he'll not be too worried about pace. I think he will need to save fuel to get to the end of the race without making another pit stop in that number 54 car. So even though Dakota Dickerson is leading over Garrett Grist, I think he's just got to be cool and calm and stick to a game plan here. He'll probably know what sort of lap time he needs to get the correct fuel consumption to get to the end without having to make another pit stop.
I think with it as slick as it is, that 56 minutes that they're going to run should be within their reach. As a problem for the 11. Thomas, we talked about a newcomer to this series and really to racing, just 13 months in the sport, and he's done a really good job all weekend long. He gets caught out just a little bit right there. One of the best battles on the racetrack is the fight for 5th. We saw that earlier between Tony Kazimit and Matt Bell, having a good go on them as they work their way back onto the lead lap. But speaking of leaders, Dakota Dickerson right there, then streaking away out in front is the 64 and the 60 of Bell and Kazimit. 3.5 seconds now from Dakota Dickerson back to Garrett Grist, and then a good ways back to Max Hanratty. such a great run by Hanratty and Cameron Castles early in the event to save fuel and avoid problems, the treacherous conditions early on. And I know Austin McCusker, you and Rodrigo Fluker winning the championship last year, and a lot of it at the end of the year, the only race you didn't lead the championship after was this one. For the rest of the season, you guys were in control. You sat on top of the charts all the way. But at the end of the season, two of, I'll say, the worst finishes that you had that weren't particularly bad by any stretch of the imagination. But to me, I looked at that as races that you guys were just willing to not risk too much because the championship was more important. For Dakota Dickerson out in front right now, and with that 17 car seemingly needing another stop, 24 seconds back to Max Hanratty, how does the driver focus on the job at hand and yet still play the game a little bit cautiously? You don't want to make foolish moves and things like that, but you don't want to back too far off your game, because isn't that when you kind of fall into complacency and mistakes might be more prevalent?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, usually when you back off a little bit, the mistakes don't come as much. You know, the mistakes come when you're really looking for the car. But if I was Dakota, I'd taking a step back and just, there's a big gap between Hanratty. Just run the same pace as Hanratty to the end of the race, you'll be fine. But usually, if you can just save your car, save your tires, and God forbid a caution comes out, you got good tires to go to the race with. Really show your cards then.
So there's a pit stop for number 60 car. Yeah, that's a shame, because that was running beautifully with Tony Skazimets there. He was looking to score his second successive podium finish in this race, and Tony's set the fastest lap last year in this race. That's about in that same car, 1:44.021. So this is he was in the pit stop. He made a pit stop during that caution period, so this can't be a scheduled stop. But the guy on the charge right now, first of all, Dakota Dickerson, he is down in the 1:50.960. That was his best lap of the race last time, and he's extended his lead over Garrett Grist to 6 seconds. That's the difference between slick tires and wet tires that we believe Grist is on. But meanwhile, the fastest lap of the race by Kyle Kirkwood, 1:49.0.
And the scenario changes again. And it changes because of the 61 car right there. George Stakos has made contact, debris out on the racetrack. Stakos stalled at the apex there, and that brings out full course caution. That's the apex of turn 6. And one more time, this mixes up the cards. It brings everybody closer together. For Tony Skazimets, who's sitting on pit lane with work on the car, that's frustrating for him. He had worked his way back to the lead lap, would have moved him closer to the leaders on the restart. Matt Bell is going to be closer now, so is Kyle Kirkwood.
Well, yeah, Kirkwood, he's the man now, no question about it. This has brought him right back into the game. All those cars, Kirkwood, Matt Bell, certainly, Anthony Simone is, however, he is a lap down still to the race leader, so we're going to have 5 cars on the lead lap when we get this full course caution completed.
5 good cars.
5 good cars with
lap.
Exactly. Dakota Dickerson, number 54, Garrett Grist, number 17, but Grist is going to have to serve his penalty. Oh, so it's good service. I'm sure he's going to have to make a pit stop now. There's a good opportunity to make it under caution. So he'll only fall to the back of the pack of cars on the lead lap. So behind Grist right now, Max Hanratty in car number 75, Kyle Kirkwood, we just talked about him, in car number 47, and Matt Bell in the number 64. They're all on the same lap.
And this is the frustration for new drivers like George Stakos right now, who I think has done a very nice job throughout the weekend in difficult conditions, in a situation that he's not accustomed to. He's driven this car a little bit in some other events that were not IMSA sanctioned, so he knows the car a little bit, but a lot of pressure on him. He's had a problem. He spun the car down there through the grass, and it appears the car may be stuck in gear. And for the people at home, this is not a manual transmission car as we know it with a stick shift. It's paddle shift, and that brings its own challenges as far as getting it in and out of gear, does it not, Austin?
Yeah, I mean, there's an air compressor and a unit that actually takes it in and out of gear on the steering wheel, so there could be a problem there. There could be an electrical problem with the steering wheel, but it definitely seems like he can't get it out of gear, and it's not the best place to be stopped on the racetrack,
And, of course, with it stuck in gear, it doesn't roll easily, so the safety workers can't just pull it out of the way. that may mean this is a little bit longer full course caution than we would expect. And if that's the case, that closes down the time of green flag racing at the end and makes it just that much more exciting and more pressure packed because you don't have the time to get the job done. George Stakos reaches back inside his number 61 Ligier chassis, tries to make some fix so the safety crew can go to work and get it out of the way, and we can get back to green flag racing. Just over and a half an hour to go in round one from Daytona International Speedway. The car that leads the prototype challenge right now is a street car. Not what you want to see. Another full course caution. Back to green flag racing before long from Daytona. Behind the safety car, Dakota Dickerson. Probably taking a chance to talk to his crew on the radio saying, all right, give me the scenario here. Tell me what I've got. Where are my competitors? How far in between? What kind of laps were we running before? What do I need to do? I mean, is that what's going on?
Without a doubt. I mean, this is really going to, this endurance race.
You kind of got the smile on your face. You're digging this, aren't you?
I mean, this endurance race turned into a sprint race. You know, this is going to be an exciting last 35 minutes of the race. And you got some hot shoes. You know, Matt Bell and Kyle Kirkwood, they're putting down some fast lap times. You know, it seems like they're, you know, a second to 2 seconds clear of everyone else. So it'll be exciting. You know, it'll be a hard-fought fight between everyone, and it'll be some amazing racing towards the end of the race.
Kind of had this smile on your face, like I said, like you were digging it, but you wanted to be out there a little. You're a little bit envious, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean,
no, he's a lot envious right now.
It'd be nice to be out there. I'm sure it would be fun, and you know, the pressure would be there, and the adrenaline would be pumping. But it's nice to watch it and see how it all shakes out now.
The voice of Austin McCusker, defending champion in the prototype challenge category. You know what it's like to stand on the top podium, and I think every other step of the podium as well. And it's one of those things we talked about it to leave here with a podium finish, and certainly to leave here with a win. When you look forward down the road to the championship, it's a completely different mindset, is it not, than if you leave here with a 5th, 6th, 8th, 10th place finish?
Yeah, I mean, with the point system that IMSA has structured, if you have a bad finish, it's really hard to claw your way back, you know, if the next guy has a really consistent year. So that's the biggest thing as far as looking at the championship. But there's, you know, some people might just want to go for the wins and not really care about the championship, so you have to worry about them sometime. But if it was me, I'd be worrying about the championship now. It's only the first race of the 6-race seasons.
But you bring up a very valid point. It's a 6-race championship as well. So you don't have many opportunities. There's the point structure, and then there's the 6 races. So you don't have a lot of opportunities to throw one away.
No.
And as we were saying, you know, you look at Stephen McAleer last year, the lost wheel here, and then a problem at Mid-Ohio. Really, the lost wheel here, if you give him points where he was running at the time, which I know you can't do, it negates some other people's points, and all of a sudden you transfer that to the end of the year, and you go, you're going into the last race of the year and everybody's nose to tail. And so you can't play what ifs. Yeah. But at the same point in time, what you can tell by looking at that is if you have a bad race in the beginning, making it up is difficult.
And particularly for Stephen McAleer, I mean, he didn't even start today's race with that fuel system problem this morning and over the weekend so far. So he's going to come out and leave Daytona with no points whatsoever, and that is a huge dent into the championship aspirations that he and Joe Robillard most definitely had.
So another silly question to ask then, when it comes down to it in the end, and it's this intense 3-way battle for the win here, what's more important, the win here at Daytona, the World Center of Racing, or knowing that you're heading into, because you know this feeling well, heading into the rest of the championship with a 2nd place finish here at Daytona, and that's going to help you in your championship run. How much do you risk for the top step? Are you thinking about race wins, or are you thinking about championships? Are they mutually inclusive or exclusive?
I mean, in order to win a championship, you need to win races and be consistent. But, you know, you can't win a championship without finishing. So you just have to play those decisions smart. If you could finish in the top 3, it's fine, but you want to go for the race win. If there's a move that you think that it'll be, high risk, and you could possibly not finish the race or do damage to you and a competitor, and possibly put it in the wall, then you not make that decision and kind of just move along.
I think Elliot Forbes Robinson, who's one of the driver stewards for IMSA, and is in the office just next to us, and I think has won everything in sports car racing that there is to win. We were talking last year, and he said, I just tell young drivers, if you know you can make the move, make the move. If you think you might be able to make the move, don't make the move. If there's any doubt in your mind, you don't make the pass. If you know you can make the pass, make the pass. And his point was, you'll finish a lot more races, garner a lot more points, win a lot more championships with that attitude than you will of, hey, I'm throwing it in and seeing what happens. I think this may work.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you could maybe towards the end of the season, you could do those types of move where you think it may work, but the first race of the season, I definitely wouldn't.
Not the place to do it.
Definitely not in my opinion, at least.
Well, I'm going to take your opinion because you've got a championship in this category, and I know that you guys, like I said, you finished on every step of the podium. You had some finishes that were off the podium. You did what you needed to do to win championships. And you look at a guy like Dakota Dickerson and where his championships literally have taken him. His F4 championship gave him the opportunity to win an F3 championship. His F3 championship has given him the opportunity via that scholarship to be here.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Mike Thompson from MLT Motorsports, he wanted Dakota in any case, and certainly winning that scholarship helped Dakota secure that ride. He's using that now to lead this race. And, there's a bunch of drivers in this field who won various scholarships through the years, and it's certainly good to see that there are such opportunities for people to further their racing career.
I believe Kyle Kirkwood is a beneficiary of some scholarships along the way.
Yeah, well, he and Dakota Dickerson actually were both Team USA scholarship winners. That's exactly right. Dakota now, amazingly, 4 or 5 years ago. It's hard to believe it's gone past so quickly, but they both made great strides since winning that Team USA scholarship, and particularly Kirkwood. I mean, God, he's been almost invincible in open wheel racing over here the last few years. He's won a couple of championships in each of the last 2 seasons.
I'm impressed with not only the young drivers we're talking about, but I'm impressed with the fans. I'm watching the fans in the grandstands right now, and I want to see these fans raise their hands and give a cheer, not only for the drivers that are out there on the racetrack, but for themselves, because these fans have been sitting here through good weather, bad weather throughout the weekend, and they've been watching some racing going on. So I know there are lots of scouts here. If you're a scout, if you're a race fan, give yourself a hand, cheer yourself on a little bit, because you guys have been stalwarts throughout. A little football action going on down on the infield. I know they've been watching race cars too. They're just playing football right now.
Yeah, we're under caution. That's fair enough.
Yeah, we're under caution, so you can go throw the football.
And we're coming down now. We're under half an hour to go then in this race, and we're still under caution. And there are. I was just wondering why the number 17 car wouldn't have made the opportunity to come onto pit lane during this caution period. And I wondered whether it was in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, if there's a caution period that follows shortly after a previous one within 15 minutes, then there is what they call the next full course caution. Is a short caution when the pits are not opened. That is not the case in the prototype challenge. So the pits drivers have been able to make a pit stop during this caution, but I don't think anybody has done so, and that's slightly surprising.
Well, maybe the answer to this question about the 17 that we keep asking, maybe the answer is we're wrong.
Yeah,
maybe. He could have dry tires on.
Yeah, maybe we have miscalculated his pit stop strategy, and it's our issue, not theirs. We're about to find out. 28 minutes to go from Daytona International Speedway, round 1 of the 2020 IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship. Lights off on the safety car, and we'll go back to green with about 27 minutes to go, and it is going to be a shootout. Open wheel standout, Dakota Dickerson in front in the black 54. What does he have for Garrett Griffiths, Max Hanratty, Kyle Kirkwood, Matt Bell right behind him. The top 5 all on the lead lap. Dickerson down low right along the stripe, waiting for the green flag. There it is. We're racing again at Daytona. 27 minutes, 20 seconds to go. What's going to unfold? Find out. Down into turn one, Dickerson with a good restart. Grist, great on the brakes, closes the gap just a little bit. Hanratty in there in the blue and yellow 75. Kirkwood as well. Matt Bell in the 64. And Dakota Dickerson with a great jump off of turn two. Not that good under brakes, it seemed like in turn one, but used that slower entry to his advantage and a huge lead off of turn two and extending the lead out of the International Horseshoe. Dakota Dickerson with a stellar restart leaves everybody else to fight for the scraps. Down into the West Horseshoe now, Grist under attack from the 23. Anthony Simone, that red 23, the white window banner, he's a lap down, not in the fight right now. Garrett Grist in the white and blue 17, just behind. And really the car putting pressure on him. The next car in line is the 47, the car that matters, trying to work through loud traffic. That's Kyle Kirkwood, and that's going to hold him up a little bit. That's good news for Dakota Dickerson.
Yeah, he's going to try and jump out front now here. We're going to have to see whether Garrett Grist can make this, get the pace going now once we're back to green and running to the finish. Look, I've got to correct myself. I think I said he didn't make a pit stop after, not this during this last caution bit, but the previous one. He did make a pit stop, didn't he? The number 54 and the number 17 both made a pit stop on lap 50 at the end of lap 55. So my apologies for that. But what sort of kind of threw me is the fact that Grist did not get up to speed during, in the green flag running between those two pit stops. He fell right back. That's what kind of led me to believe. I think he has made a pit stop. He must be on slicks, but he wasn't able to get the car really running to its ultimate capability. We'll see now, though, whether that has changed.
Open wheel standout. Kyle Kirkwood in the 47, all over Garrett Grist. Tries to go around the high side through the tri-oval, braking for turn one. Gets the job done. Grist dropping back. Kirkwood going forward. That red 23 now, the next target for Kyle Kirkwood. Not on the lead lap. That's Anthony Simone. So Kirkwood wants to get by him, try to close down on Dakota Dickerson. But Dickerson has used that squabble behind him to his advantage. Lap cars mixed in with lead lap cars on that restart. That's been advantage Dickerson and has really held up the other players. Now Kyle Kirkwood has had to work through that, as has Max Hanratty. Hanratty's dropped back to fourth, and Kirkwood now trying to get past Simone. And here's the challenge. You've got those slicks on, but still you can see almost a sheen in the road down in the braking zone and around the apex into turn six. How challenging is that for these guys right now, especially with the Michelin's being cold after that long yellow?
Yeah, definitely. You got to worry about the wet spots on the circuit. And, the wet weather tires don't work so well in puddles and wet spots, so you definitely got to watch out when you're passing another competitor for over the 23 car to the bus stop.
Yeah, it's not a battle for position because Anthony Simone is a lap down. Kirkwood is not. Kirkwood does make that move around the inside. I think Simone probably saw him coming, realized that Kirkwood was really going rather quickly, and so kind of let him go through without putting up too much of a fight. So now Kyle Kirkwood can kind of put his head down and see if he can reduce that deficit to Dakota Dickerson. When they came across the line last time around, it was 4.4 seconds. Here comes Dickerson now across the line. His lap time, a 1 minute 49.6. That is his fastest lap of the race so far. Kirkwood, a 148.640, a new fastest lap of the race.
For Max Hanratty, we saw he and Cameron Castles both lead the blue and yellow number 75. He is headed the wrong direction. He was up towards the front on the restart. Hanratty back to fifth and being passed by lap cars right now. So Max Hanratty does not have the chassis he had underneath him at the earlier stages of this race. Headed the wrong direction, leaving the battle up front to Dickerson, Kirkwood, and Bell. And really it's down to Dakota Dickerson and Kyle Kirkwood right now. Kirkwood has worked his way through lap traffic, and I think the next car in his sights is indeed Dakota Dickerson. Dickerson through turn six and up onto the super speedway, as you can get an idea of just how congested it is a little bit further back. There's Max Hanratty at the back of this group right here, the 35 with the door open. That's Dylan Murray, race winner last year in that 35, the Abbey Riley chassis, sharing it with Jim Cox, who he regularly drives with and won with in Michelin Pilot Challenge last year. Right side door open on that car right now, and that's a problem for them if they cannot get it closed. But he just streamed past Hanratty a moment ago, not for position, because Dylan Murray down a lap, but it just shows you the pace that the 75 seems to no longer have.
Yeah, that's right. And nor does Garrett Grist in number 17 car either. He's definitely falling back quite rapidly from the leaders. His last lap time for Garrett Grist, 1:54. The leaders, 1:49.6 for Dickerson, 1:48.6 for Kirkwood. They come across the line again. A new fastest lap of the race this time for Dakota Dickerson, a 1:48.586. But behind him, Kirkwood goes faster again, a 1:47.699.
Things heating up at Daytona in January. 21 minutes and a few seconds to go in round one of the IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship. Kyle Kirkwood, the third driver, the guest driver in that 47 from 47 Motorsports, sharing that car with regular drivers Joel Janko and Jonathan George. The guest driver marching 47 forward for Dakota Dickerson. Got to be a little bit frustrating, because he knows he's in it for the championship. He and his teammate in the 54, Dean Baker, he's in it for the championship, and he's got some guest star in, putting the pressure on him, trying to bring their team to the forefront. So Dickerson right now having to focus forward, but the gap between himself and Kyle Kirkwood, two young open wheel stars, just 2.6 seconds.
Yeah, cool. This is going to be an interesting battle. But certainly Kirkwood is absolutely flying out there right now. He's just got purple in Sector 1. Even in Sector 1, he was almost a full second quicker than Dakota Dickerson. Looking across the racetrack, the two leaders are just going through the bus stop, and Kirkwood clearly a lot closer than he was last time around. One of the cars just made a pit stop was number 33. Hats off to those guys. They got that car repaired. That was Lance Wills, who led the race in the early stages, was doing a fabulous job and had a spin. He brought the car into the pits, but there was damage. That car went behind the wall, but they've worked really hard to get that car back out again. Anthony Lazzaro is turning laps now in that number 33.
Battles all around the racetrack, and they're kind of mixed up. You see 17 of Garrett Grist, the white and blue, doing battle with Max Hanratty, the blue with the yellow highlights, but they were mixed in there with the 40 of Keith Grant and the 35 of Dylan Murray, who are laps down. So one of those things where the battles around the racetrack are jumbled up for those lap cars, and the cars running at the back of the top five, but up front, the gap to from Kyle Kirkwood to Dakota Dickerson, under 1 second. Inside 20 minutes to go. Kirkwood on a charge, closing up to the rear wing of Dakota Dickerson.
That's exactly right. And a new fast lap once again for Kyle Kirkwood. 3 laps in a row. 146.657, the new standard for Kyle Kirkwood in car 47, the second place car.
19 minutes to go. 2 open wheel standouts. 2 young drivers trying to make a career now in racing. One focusing on open wheel. That's Kyle Kirkwood. The other using his open wheel success to move to sports cars. That's Dakota Dickerson. They are locked in a battle up front within a second of each other. And good battles around the racetrack as Max Hanratty gets past Garrett Grist. And Grist now seems to have fallen well off the pace. The blue and white 17 dropping back. The light blue and yellow moving forward. And the gap continuing to close up front. Dickerson and Kirkwood. The battle for the lead closing down into the tri-oval. Kyle Kirkwood looks to the outside, across the line, down into turn 1. He seems to have the handling on that 47 Motorsports entry and makes it look easy as he goes around the high side and gets it done. Kyle Kirkwood around the high side of Dakota Dickerson and gets the job done down into turn 1. Used a little bit of the draft, but it seems like from this restart, Kyle Kirkwood has been on a charge, and that the car he has underneath him is spectacular, doing exactly what he wants to do. And let's face it, these 2 young guys, open wheel standout, both of them championship winners the last couple of years in their respective categories. there's as much bragging rights on the line just for that pass as there is for this race win. Dakota Dickerson wants to say, hey, I'm just as good as you are, but I think I'm going to focus on sports car racing. And Kyle Kirkwood says, I want to win anything that I can and just go ahead and submit the fact that I'm a championship caliber driver. So a lot of, I should say, ego on the line as in arrogance. But these kids want to win. These drivers want to win. They are the stars of tomorrow.
They are. But, I mean, that was a clear example of the straight line speed superiority, I think, of the Norma chassis. I mean, he just breezed past Dakota Dickerson there. When it came out of the bus stop, there had to be 10 or 15 car lengths between them. But by the time they got to the start-finish line, Dakota Dickerson has already had to give best to Kyle Kirkwood. The Norma just breezed past, and that is another new leader of this race. That's Kyle Kirkwood in car number 47 now with 16 minutes remaining.
Talk about these young drivers being the stars of tomorrow. Austin McCusker, one of those stars as well. One of the co-champions in this category last year. Austin, you look at that pass, it really was kind of almost a foregone conclusion with a decent run off of the bus stop.
Yeah, he made it look really easy. He sucked up on through this long straightaway and just made an easy pass on the outside. Now he's stretched the gap. He's up to 2.1 seconds already. So it seems like if he can just keep his head down and not make any mistakes, he'll knock on wood. Hopefully come home with 47 Motorsports.
16 minutes yet to go, and I think the other thing that we saw there was a world of respect because of Dickerson's part. He stayed down low on the stripe. He said, if you want it, you're going to have to go around the high side, the more difficult side to get the pass done. But I watched that car coming down the stripe. It never wavered. It never moved. When Kyle pulled out to make the pass, he didn't give him the little feint. He didn't give him the little juke. He didn't make him think. He just held his line and said, if you can do it, go ahead and do it.
Yeah, definitely, like we were talking about before. I'm sure Dakota's thinking about the championship at the end of the day. Doesn't want to make a stupid mistake and possibly hit into Kyle and take both out of the race.
But how much does respect play into it in general throughout the season? There are guys, drivers that you race with, that you know you can go wheel to wheel with. Are there not? And others that maybe that respect isn't quite as strong?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously you need the respect and want the respect. But, it'll change your decision towards the end of the season and into the next race or how that first race. You're racing that as they do. And, it's obviously a lot, more enjoyable when there's respect between you guys and race each other harder and harder each other.
Good friend, multi-time IMSA champion, Le Mans winner, Sebring winner, Petit Le Mans winner, Johnny O'Connell always says, race me the way you want to be raced, because I'm going to race you the way that you race. And if you race each other with that respectful attitude, you see some great racing going on. And I think that's what we just saw there. It's what we've seen in this championship over the years. It's what we saw with you guys last year, you and Rodrigo Fluker, your teammate. That's how you brought home a championship. We're seeing a good run here today. And right now for Kyle Kirkwood, it's just another tick of the box showing people what type of a driver he is. He's certainly quick, but he's versatile.
Yeah, and after taking the lead, is he going to be content to just cruise home? No. Each of the last two laps since taking the lead, a new fastest lap of the race. The new mark on this last time around was 146.271. That's still a couple of seconds away from Tony Kazimitz's record from last year, but he's just pulling away from the field. And Dakota Dickerson now, he's going to have to keep that pace up, because not too far behind him and actually closing by more than a second on that last lap is Matt Bell in car number 64. So with the track conditions now pretty much fully dry, I think the advantage has very much gone back to either way the Normas. We've got Norma first and third, we've got Ligier's second and fourth. But it's the two Normas that are clearly the quickest cars on the track at the moment. Kyle Kirkwood in the lead, pulling away. Dakota Dickerson, he's still got a 3.8 second margin over Matt Bell, but if it continues the same rate, that's going to come down before too long.
13 minutes to go. The question is, can Dakota Dickerson now hold on? We've seen full course cautions change the complexion. We've seen weather change the complexion of this race. And you wonder, with 13 minutes yet to go, are we going to see yet another change from here in Daytona? Kyle Kirkwood still out in front. Dakota Dickerson runs second. But the question is, does Matt Bell in the 64, does he have the speed to chase down Dickerson in front? Quicker right now, lap to lap. and only 3 seconds behind. But you figure the lap times that these guys are running, catching Dakota Dickerson is one thing, getting by him is another. But Jeremy said it a few minutes ago. Austin McCusker here with us, defending champion. That Norma chassis, you drove it, good straight line speed. At Daytona, at this racetrack, when you come into the bus stop, what's the distance you need before you've got a good draft on somebody, and what's the distance you've got to have before you know you're going to have a good run by him down the front straightaway?
I mean, as long as you're in the tow, I think the Norma seems to exceed in the last quarter of the straightaway here, and it seems to actually keep pulling is where the VJ seems to plateau a little bit. But it seems like the 64 car and the 37 car have a drier track set up than the 54. We talked about it before. Maybe the 54 was set up for a little bit of the wet, so that's maybe why he's dropping back a little bit.
I was going to ask you, too, about the aerodynamic silhouette of this car in those conditions. Do you add more downforce in the rain, and perhaps is one of those cars, is the 54 loaded with a little bit more because they thought it was going to stay wet a little bit longer, and that just accentuates the difference? If you're running more downforce, it's great that it sticks and that you've got good braking, but it is going to create some drag. It is going to hold you back down the straightaway.
It's definitely a possibility because, as we saw when Kyle Kirkwood went by Dakota Dickerson, he kind of breezed by with ease, and sometimes it's not that easy, but he made it look easy, and you know, he could have some more downforce in the number 54, but it really could affect that.
And I know some people, and certainly it's conversation in the paddock, whether it's the Prototype Challenge paddock, the Michelin paddock, the WeatherTech paddock, you know, talking about balance of performance and straight line speed and this and that and so on and so forth. But really every car has its strengths and weaknesses, and those vary and change by the racetrack that you go to, right? I mean, you may have the weapon of choice at one racetrack, but it's not the weapon of choice somewhere else. You may think that the Norma chassis excels on top speed, but if you go to a tight, twisty racetrack or one with a lot more stop and go corners, it may not be the one that you want to have at that particular track.
Yeah, definitely. At some other circuits throughout the season, you'll definitely see the Norma. And it'll be more down to the engineering and the teams to make the car the best as possible, which I'm sure that they're all great at doing. But definitely, the track's definitely affected with the long straightaway here at Daytona.
No question about that. And just to hammer that home again, Kirk another fastest lap, 46.169 now. Dakota Dickerson, though, in second place. He's just done his best lap of the race. That was a 147.6, but even so, he lost 0.8 of a second to Matt Bell. The gap from second to third now is down to 2.1 seconds.
I was going to say he needs to find time because Matt Bell is there. You see a problem for, I believe, the 11 who spins, staying wide, letting Matt Bell through, and Matt Bell he wanted to see that 11 out there. He wanted to see him out of the way. He certainly didn't want to see him at the apex of the bus stop. That would have checked up Matt Bell, but nothing doing. A clear shot now to Dakota Dickerson out of the bus stop and into the tri-oval, and it looks like a repeat. It's just a little bit further down the racetrack than when the 47 went by Dakota Dickerson. Dickerson may be able to battle a little bit. No, he can't. Around the outside, Matt Bell goes and makes it look easy. Gets to the middle of the corner, gets the car turned, and then off the corner he goes. And for Dakota Dickerson, just a bit helpless right there as Matt Bell around the high side, and now Dakota Dickerson needs to hold on to the 54 as he's going to be relegated back to third. Still a podium finish. Yep. And now is where you've got to let any emotion that you had built up, I would think, Austin, go. Because when you look at it, Max Hanratty well back. The podium finish for Dakota Dickerson. He's there if he'll just stay cool, calm, and collected. This is really kind of where it all gets set up. Matt Bell in the trailing 64. The 11 goes wide, so he doesn't get held up at all. It's a great shot off the bus stop, but when you look at it right there, it's about 4 or 5 car lengths. By the time they get to turn 4 on the super speedway, there's nothing there anymore. And as they come across the line and head down into turn 1, Bell to the high side, and there's no out-braking that goes on. He goes around the outside, clears the 54, back onto the preferred line, and then onto the brakes. So there's even no battle in the braking zone.
Not a big battle at all. I mean, the 54 definitely has to have a little bit more downforce than they did in the dry setup. I can see the 5 lanes on the car, and I saw a bunch laps in the Ligiers and the paddock that weren't running them in the dry sessions yesterday. So maybe that's a factor, and maybe a little bit more rear wing is causing a bit of drag.
Well, and it doesn't take much. It's just because that dividend either gets paid or lost all the way from the exit of the bus stop. If you're running that extra downforce in the wet, well, that's great. That benefit helps all the way. But if the track dries like it has, I would assume that the penalty you pay all the way around. It affects the acceleration. It affects the top speed. Ultimately, it affects the elapsed time from the exit to the braking zone of turn one, and that's what we see there on the racetrack and the difference in speed. Yeah, definitely. It seems to definitely impacts the acceleration, and you can see that it just doesn't carry the speed. It gets to the top speed that it normally does at the end of the turn. Inside 7 minutes, Kyle Kirkwood putting on a performance since the final restart. About 20 minutes to go. Kirkwood out in front, 9 seconds in hand over Matt Bell. 2 Norma chassis running first and second right now. Dakota Dickerson in the first of the Ligiers running third. He's had a good run. We've seen some great fights and some great strategy play. The 75 seemed to have the strategic advantage. Cameron Castle's doing a fantastic job of saving fuel, going well over an hour on that first fuel stint, setting this team up for an opportunity to do one less pit stop than everybody else. But the full course caution changed all of that, and the strategy gets changed again. It is not over. 6 minutes plus to go as Kyle Kirkwood goes around the outside of one of the lap cars. And anything can happen. You still got to clear everyone. You still got to get by. You never know if somebody's going to have a mistake, make it a little bit more difficult. You don't want to be a part of somebody else's issue. So inside 5 minutes to go, Kirkwood still needs to stay focused forward. Yeah, definitely. It seems like Kyle's got a pretty good gap, almost 10 seconds. So I would just, I'm sure he's not going to tune it down a notch, but it seems like he's setting purple lap times every lap. So you just got to make sure he passes the lap cars at the right time in the right place, and make sure there's no contact.
Yeah, I think he had to pass a couple of cars on that lap, did Carl, so it was he lost a little bit of time, but as you say, he was still purple in sector 2 on that lap, so he's extended that lead. It was tricky a little bit because of that traffic. There's still 7 seconds. There's a comfortable margin for Kyle Kirkwood with just 5 minutes remaining in this race. Dakota Dickerson, he's pretty much settled for third place, and that car and the 54 in third place, and number 75 Max Hanratty in fourth. Both of those two teams have made it to the end of this, will have made it to the end of this race, we believe, on just the 2 pit stops. So they played the strategy right, but they just didn't quite have the pace. But Max Hanratty in that 4th position, he's stretched away from Garrett Grist in this final stint of the race by a very comfortable margin. Garrett Grist must have some kind of a problem in that number 17 car. Kyle Kirkwood, inside 5 minutes to go, still looking to maintain that perfect batting average. Has run 1 sports car race in the Prototype Challenge category. That was the 2018 Michelin Sports Car Encore at Sebring. Walked away with a victory there with his teammates. Steps back in here this weekend in 2020. The opening round of the IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship. And looking to make it 1,000. The perfect batting average, his second race, looking for his second victory. Inside 4 minutes to go now. Defending champion in class, Austin McCusker with us in the booth. I'm Brian Till along with Jeremy Shaw. And Austin, you've got a big lead like that. Kind of run through the top 3 for me. Kyle Kirkwood's got a big lead. He knows he does. How do you stay focused on the job at hand? He still has got to get around for the next 3.5 minutes. He's got some lap traffic to get by. Yeah, I mean, you're going to be putting as much effort into it, putting down fast sector times, but the biggest thing is getting by lap traffic as quickly as possible, and just not making any contact, not making any stupid decisions, avoiding any wet spots that may still be on the circuit. Matt Bell's in second place. He's got a car behind him that he's cleared. 8.5 seconds to the leader. Chances of catching him pretty slim. So as Matt Bell, are you still digging as hard as you can, or have you gone into just maintain mode? I think Matt's probably pushing as hard as he can. He doesn't know what's going to happen to Kyle. There could be a slow up with another lap car. Could decrease that gap substantially. So he's probably pushing for everything. I don't know if he's taking any big risks. He's passing lap cars, but he's definitely pushing his hard. Dakota Dickerson in third, a little bit dejected. He's had 2 Norma chassis
chassis drive by him down the front straightaway. Led this race for a good part of it in the ladder going, but he's got a podium finish there. What's his team saying to him on the radio? What's his focus right now?
He's probably just trying to hold on everything he can. There's a big gap to Max Hanratty, so I'm sure he's just trying to hang on, make sure he doesn't make any mistakes, and no contact with anything, no mistakes at all. So I'm sure that the team's just trying to tell him.
Take the points and go.
Yep.
You just changed driver suit and helmet and cars faster than any other 3 drivers ever could. I just had you in 3 different cars and 3 different helmets. And gave us some great insight. It's been great to have you here because of that.
Yeah, what you were saying about Kyle Kirkwood, he just set the fastest lap of the race. It was just over 2 minutes remaining, so he was only a few seconds away from the white flag. He'll have to do 2 more laps now to get to the end of this race. So 1:45.786 then for Kyle Kirkwood, our race leader, and a 9.1 second gap back to second place. That's Matt Bell, the Englishman. Dakota Dickerson running really nicely in the 3rd place. That'll be a great start to the season for MLT Motorsports. As Austin McCuskey was saying, he knows firsthand that Norm must definitely have a slight advantage here at Daytona International Speedway. So to come home the best of the Ligiers in 3rd place after a really good run, leading the race for a goodly portion, that's a great day's work for Dakota Dickerson in that number 54 car alongside Dean Baker from Canada.
Well, I've so appreciated having your experience here. I mean, you and Rodrigo left here last year with 2nd place points, I believe.
Yep.
And so you know that you don't have to win this race to win a championship, but you also know by looking, we talked about Stephen McAleer, if you lose a bunch of points here, it's hard to compete at the end of the season. We talked about the 6-race stint, so that makes it difficult. I would think white flag this time by for our leader, Kyle Kirkwood, unless he slows dramatically on the racetrack, but I don't think he gets slow enough to make up those 42 seconds, so I think he's going to do 1 more lap around here. And there's Dakota Dickerson, probably echoing your thoughts, and that is take the points and go.
Yep, without a doubt. He's definitely playing it calm right now and just waiting for that checkered flag to fly.
And there it is, the white flag for Kyle Kirkwood. What a performance he's put on, and it's been so enjoyable to watch all of these drivers, but for all the spectators here and all the viewers at home, you really are watching the future of both sports car racing and open wheel racing in this country with some of these young drivers, stars like Kyle Kirkwood, Matt Bell, Dakota Dickerson. One of those deals where you look at these young drivers, these are the names that you'll see. You'll also hear names like Rodrigo Kluger and Austin McCusker, who we were fortunate to have with us today. Austin, like I said, very much appreciate you being here and appreciate your insight. It's just thrilling to be a part of this Prototype Challenge Championship, where you get to see not only great racing and great technology, but a little glimpse into the future as well, and very different outlooks on what motorsport is, from some of these silver drivers on their way up to bronze drivers who are just happy to be here and pleased to go sports car racing with world-class sports cars that IMSA provides. Kirkwood up on the banking one more time through NASCAR 2 down the back straightaway into the bus stop.
Yeah, you've got a feel for Garen Grist. He's just on a lap down. He's just cruising to the end now, trying to reach the checkered flag. He has got 1 lap down. He's in the 5th position, number 17. That's another car that led early on, but he's now got to try and just complete this last time and hope to stay ahead of Anthony Simone, who's charging hard, the number 23 car behind him.
Some stories that we didn't want to talk about. Joe Robillard, Stephen McAleer missing this race, not starting, and Anthony Lazzaro, the problems for he and Lance Wilsey. Disappointing to see those, but thrilling to see young stars perform here at Daytona, like Kyle Kirkwood, who takes the victory in the 47 for 47 Motorsports at Daytona International Speedway. Joel Janko, Jonathan George, Kyle Kirkwood will celebrate a race win, round 1 of the 2020 IMSA Prototype Challenge Championship. And they start off on a very, very strong footing with that victory here. Superb drive by Kirkwood. Matt Bell, impressive as well, as was Dakota Dickerson. And as you pointed out, Austin, for Dakota, he's just got to take the points and go and just say, my weapon will be better at another racetrack. That's what makes this racing so intense. I think it's what makes it so good, is you've got opportunities all along the way and make the best of them when they arise.
Definitely got to make the best out of the race that you can. And 3rd place is not bad for the championship. I'm sure he should be happy with that as he's looking for the end game championship.
Biggest surprise for you, Jeremy?
Biggest surprise? I don't know. Just the fact that probably so many cars had difficulties of one sort or another. But certainly it's no surprise that Kyle Kirkwood would come away with the victory here. That was a great effort, and it was a great end of the season in 2019 for that crew, with Jonathan George and Joel Janko winning the Michelin Sebring Encore, and then coming here at the start of this season, bringing Kyle Kirkwood along with them as well, and they're going to get this victory again as well. So it's been 2 wins in a row now for that for the pair of drivers, and Kyle Kirkwood, he was the icing on the cake today.
I would say it's a surprise, but what about drives by like Stephen Thomas, a guy with not a lot of experience? He and Thomas Merrill with a good run to 8. Good to see them. Brothers Keith Grant, David Grant back in a different chassis, a different team this year. They're back at the Norma chassis to try that. I thought it was great to see Dylan Murray and Jim Cox climb into that Ave Riley chassis that we haven't seen in a couple of seasons. And actually, Dylan Murray had some pretty impressive runs, some pretty impressive laps there in the end, even with the door coming open on that car. So I thought that was interesting as well. Tony Kazmits showed in the 60 just how fast he still is when they got back after that restart. And I got confused with timing and scoring a little bit and thought they were battling for the lead, but impressive lap times by them. And what that sets up for me is the long view of this 2020 championship. There are going to be some great stories to tell. Yeah,
it's going to be a good one, no question about it. This is a really good start to the season. We end up with 4 cars on the lead lap. Garrett Grist was able to maintain that 5th position on that final lap. He upped his pace quite considerably actually on that last lap. Did Grist to remain clear of Anthony Simoni in 6th.
Impressive stuff. And for this 47 Motorsport team, when you look at the results that they've had over the last year, and then you go and you follow Joel Janko, Jonathan George, and Tristan Nunez back at the Michelin Encore in November at Sebring. That's the team that took the victory there. And I think for Joel Janko, Jonathan George, and that team, they took that momentum here. They bring Kyle Kirkwood in, and that momentum just continues to build. It stays strong. And what do they do with that momentum? They take it to the checkered flag. Momentum's a big thing.
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, I think that that was the deciding factor of them coming to 47 Motorsports this year, and it seems like they put a great car together for them, and great lineup, and hats off to them for always putting a great car together for them.
Yeah, absolutely right. And Joel Janko in that first stint, he just did exactly what he had to do. Bring the car in one piece to the first pit stop, hand it over to Jonathan George. Jonathan did turn to some fantastic laps all the way through the middle stint, and then Kyle Kirkwood brought it home.
Kyle Kirkwood doing what he has not done before, and that's go to victory lane at Daytona International Speedway. He's been to victory lane plenty of times before, but this one will be special, and maybe what you're looking at is a little bit of future. Maybe he'll be an IndyCar star, but he'll come back and run the Rolex 24 and celebrate victory here in a different type of prototype. We will see. Thanks for joining us. IMSA Prototype Challenge. It's been an intense one, an intense opening round, and the very first race for the International Motorsports Association in the new year 2020. The checkered flag, the celebration, it's going to begin in victory lane here at Daytona. Thanks for joining us, everybody. For Jeremy Shaw, Austin McCusker, thanks for joining us. We'll see everybody down the road. The next race for these guys, Sebring. Don't miss it.